All right, we're a couple members short, but they will be joining us shortly. So we're just going to get this started. I'm going to call the meeting, the June 10th, 2025 meeting of the Lakeville School Board for Independent School District 194. Please rise with me as we say Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's take roll call starting on my right.
Brett Nicholson.
Paul Carbone.
I'm Matt Swanson.
Michael Bauman.
Carly Anderson.
All right. Any amendments or adjustments to the agenda? If there are none, I'd move to approve the agenda as drafted.
Second.
All right, seconded by Director Cameron. Being a first and second, all in favor, or any discussion on that? No discussion. Being a first and second, all in favor of approval of the agenda as drafted, say aye.
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 All right, it's approved. We'll move on to the good news. Superintendent Bauman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good news from Lakeville area schools on June 10th. Today, June 10th, was the last day of school for our elementary students, and June 12th will be the last day of school for middle and high school students. Congratulations on another great year. We hope our students have a safe, relaxing, and fun summer. Enjoy some of the fun that we all get to have during our summer break and the last day of school by visiting the district's Facebook webpage. I don't have the URL for that, but you can go there and have a good time. Congratulations to the 2025 graduating class. 973 Lakeville area school seniors celebrated commencement on June 5th at Mariucci Arena at the University of Minnesota, including 478 students from Lakeville North and 495 students from Lakeville South. 28 Lakeville Pathways Academy seniors celebrated commencement on June 4th over at Brackett's Crossing Country Club, and just want to wish and extend to all of our students and their families a congratulations and best of luck in your future endeavors, class of 2025. Let's give a little round of applause for that. Students of the Month. Lakeville Area Schools has Students of the Month recognition program we do throughout the year, and we're excited to announce that June students are Zeeland Hayes, 4th grade at Lake Marion Elementary, Suleiman Hussein, 8th grade Century Middle School, and Virginia Ruig, 9th grade Lakeville South High School. Way to go. You can give them a little bit of something. We also have Staff of the Month that we run all year long as well, and we're excited to announce that June staff are Steve Lendway, Chief Custodian at Crystal Lake Elementary Center, and Jamie Mueller, who is the Art Specialist for Cherry View and Orchard Lake Elementary Schools. Congratulations to those Staff of the Month. Lakeville South student selected as Minnesota winner of the 2025 Congressional Art Competition. Lakeville South High School 11th grade student Alice Yee has been selected as the Minnesota District 2 winner of the 2025 Congressional Art Competition for her piece titled Blue Sucker of Minnesota. Yee will have her artwork displayed in the Cannon Tunnel of the U.S. Capitol for 1 year. She has also been invited to attend the winner's celebration and luncheon reception in Washington, D.C. on June 11th. Way to go, Alice. And Lakeville area school students earned bilingual seals. This spring, a select group of students voluntarily took the bilingual seals assessment, demonstrating their levels of language proficiency in languages other than English. When students show proficiency in all 4 modalities, listening, reading, speaking, and writing, they are awarded either a certificate, a gold seal, or a platinum seal. State colleges and universities throughout Minnesota award college credit for bilingual seals and certificates. Lakeville North Speech Team achieves top national honors. The Lakeville North High School Speech Team delivered an outstanding performance at the 2025 National Individual Events Tournament of Champions, held recently in Kansas City, Missouri. Competing against the nation's best, the team earned a top 3 finish in the prestigious Act 2 team category. Students also earned individual recognition for their exceptional performances. Mayor Leo, 2nd place in program oral interpretation and 5th place in dramatic interpretation. Harper Jensen, quarterfinalist in informative speaking. Yu Tong Jiong, quarterfinalist in prose interpretation. And one more, Kaylin Nguyen, quarterfinalist in oral interpretation. Congratulations to those speech students. Now we clap. And then if you want to read more about amazing things happening here in our district, isd194.org/news. One other thing. We're pleased to share a short highlight video from the district's What Did You Learn series. Throughout the school year, we visited students from across the district to hear what they've been learning about in science, math, language arts, and social studies, and much, much more. This video captures just a few of the engaging, meaningful learning experiences happening every day in our schools. We're encouraging you to see more from What Did You Learn series visiting isd194.org/video-stories. Okay. Do we have a video? Oh, here we go.
Some of my favorite units were like the ballistics, so you can like see the trajectory of the bullets, and like also blood. We learned about like the different types of blood and how to identify them and like different tests that they use.
Right now we're learning about how to do algebra, and the last thing we did was fractions.
What I've learned in English is how to improve my vocabulary, grammar, and writing skills by doing lit circles to improve and advance in my reading skills.
In social studies, I have been learning about Central and South America and the people who live there.
Right now we're getting ready for our Pops concert. I'm also in the a cappella choir for Encore, so we are getting ready for Encore night, which is a whole bunch of solos and duets in the first half. Then the second half is all of our repertoire from our entire year.
An open circuit is a circuit that is like opened, it is not connected to the device, as if like a charger is connected to the outlet but is not connected to the phone. We've been learning about that all Minnesota license plates say that Minnesota has 10,000 lakes, but that's actually very incorrect, because it actually has 11,842 lakes, and they're off by 1,842.
This is a flower and the yellow part is, and I just dried all out blue because this is the blue sky. There's like lava in the flower, and then there's spikes all over the lava, and then there's a big round circle.
One thing that I've learned is how to like dissect a story and what features are in it.
I really liked welding this year. It was like one of those new skills that you wouldn't learn like anywhere else, and it was a really fun experience.
What we're learning in math class is tax and interest, so like the percent of change.
Currently we're going in Latin America. We're learning about the geographical and cultural beliefs there. We just finished the Europe section. We learned about the British Empire, their colonization, the Alps, and Russian-Ukraine war.
And of course, a lot more. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Superintendent Bauman. There are no stakeholders signed up for public comment today. So we'll hop past that, move on to the consideration of the consent agenda. Any items that any board members want to remove for further discussion? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. All right. There's a first by Director Carbone. Is there a second?
A second.
All right, seconded by Director Anderson. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is approved. Move on to the reports, and we're going to invite up, if they are prepared in here, Senator Duckworth and Representative Whitty.
Zach, good to see you. Hey, Jeff, good to see you.
Yeah, can't bring Jeff anywhere. Just kidding. Well, good afternoon or evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invitation. And if it's okay with you, we're just going to share a few updates from the legislative session. Then, of course, we're always open to your feedback and any questions that you might have, if that's all right.
Great.
So I'll dive right in. First and foremost, we do always appreciate the invitation to be here with you. I want to start off by complimenting Lakeville schools. You all do a phenomenal job. Just had to go get 2 of my little kids from their last day of school at one of the elementary schools, so they're pretty pumped up and excited. But wanted to really give you all props and all the teachers and staff for what you do and what you achieve. 91% graduation rate, which is higher than the state average. MCA scores well above the state average in terms of math, reading, and science. Growing enrollment and very, very strong attendance rates. That's not easy. It takes a lot of folks, a lot of good people, a phenomenal educational culture to achieve that. So thank you for what you all do on behalf of our community. We're very, very proud to represent you at the Capitol and work hard on your behalf. So that being said, I'm going to cover a couple of things that were in the education bill, a couple of things that you heard about that you may be wondering that weren't in the education bill, and what you can expect. And I mean, this bill is fresh. It's less than 24 hours from passing. I didn't get home till 3 this morning, so we were working hard on your behalf. Jeff, they were faster than us. They got home a little bit earlier. A couple things that were not in the bill that would be of interest to you. There was talk about a state mandated ban on student cell phone use. That was not included in the bill. The board and school districts will have the ability to still continue to address that as they see fit at their level. There was also a proposal that would have allowed school boards to renew capital levies without necessarily having to take it to the community for a vote. That was not included in the final bill, just for your information, so you guys are tracking that. A few things that were in the bill and will become law that you're going to want to look into and be prepared for: a cardiac emergency response plan mandate. There is an additional 1-year hold harmless for compensatory revenue that I'm sure will be of interest to you. Some additional measures to address student truancy and low attendance. There are several districts across the state that are continuing to struggle with that. Might not be as big a concern here, but some things you're going to want to be mindful of to always find ways to improve that. There was a school transportation training deadline mandate that was repealed, some additional minor modifications to the READ Act, which you're going to want to make sure that you're spun up on and compliant with. You now are allowed to legally donate surplus textbooks that you don't need anymore. For some reason that was illegal. You can now do that. So now on to some of the more important things. Bill, we're going to talk some spending and funding stuff. So the basic per pupil formula allowance will increase at the projected inflation levels in the upcoming biennium, 2.7% and then 3%, 2.7 and then 3%. And it's going to increase the current amount from $7,281 to $7,481 and then $7,705 per student. In the following biennium, the basic pupil formula allowance will again increase. Right now that's projected at 3% in 2028 and 2% in 2029. So some things that you guys can begin to bank on, forecast, and do your planning and budget projections on. The school employee summer unemployment benefits mandate does continue. However, the legislature did set aside some funds that districts will hopefully be able to apply for and utilize if you find yourself short in that regard. Again, that's just for a little while longer. After that, it might fall to districts to continue to cover if that remains law. There was a proposal from the governor's office to eliminate QComp. I heard from some teachers about that one. That did not get eliminated, so that is something the district will still be able to utilize and compensate teachers in that regard. There were some other changes to a school fund.
Senator Duckworth?
Yes.
About how many teachers did you hear from?
Well, that's between me and them, Super. I'm just
Okay.
kidding. A fair amount. They had nothing but good things to say. They just wanted to make sure that they knew if that was actually going to get cut or not. There's a permanent extension and improvement of the short call teacher substitute program. I'm not sure how much that impacts you all here, but I know the teacher shortage is real. It's a big deal. Finding subs is difficult. This is to try to help you all do that. Let's see, there will be, and this is important, a little bit further out in the 2028-2029 biennium, there will be a $250 million reduction in the special education cross-subsidy in terms of state funding. Now, that's a little ways out, so that could change or it could get improved. Hopefully it doesn't worsen. But in terms of trying to address the $6 billion deficit the state's facing, there is a reduction in the future to special education cross-subsidy funding. I know when I sat in your seat, there were really two things we always wanted to hear about: education funding formula, special education cross-subsidy. What are you going to do for us there? So there are some pluses and minuses and some trade-offs that y'all will have to be mindful of when you're budgeting. And then another thing, special education transportation reimbursement aid to school districts will be reduced by about $48 million. How that impacts Lakeville, you'll have to dive into a little bit more, but there will be a little bit of reduction there. One other thing I want to mention that's important for teachers, I'm sure they're already aware of it, but Jeff and I were happy to vote for and help pass an improvement to the teacher pension plan. Lowered the age at which a member becomes eligible for the enhanced early retirement reduction from 62 to 60 years old, and lowering the associated benefit reduction percentage from 6% to 5%. So I know teachers and districts were looking for some help in regard to teacher pensions. We were able to deliver that this legislative session. We'll keep working on it. We know there's more work to be done there. But those are sort of the high-level changes legislatively that will impact you all and your students in the district. So, Jeff, I did a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Just kidding. Not your turn. Go right ahead.
That's why they call him Senator. Thank you. I just want to follow up a little bit on the UI insurance. That was something that was looking to get sunset, kind of held up. We did fund that, which I think helps, especially on some of the mandates, removing some of them, and that was one of them. But also for unemployment insurance clarity, there is now required by the department to issue clear written guidance. School employees will be informed that UI benefits require them to actively seek work. And so that piece seemed like it was missing in this, and they think that's going to be helpful for you as they go forward. As Zach said, one of the bigger things was the teacher's pension. I was a co-sponsor on it in the House, and the reason I thought it was important, early on in session, I reached out to the superintendent to ask to connect with our teachers and send emails out. And one of the things I think is always important that we listen, learn, and understand the issues that affect the boots on the ground, the people in those positions. And we are sending out information, and part of it was we wanted to understand, because we received so many emails on the teacher's pension, the 60-30, which was never going to be possible due to the cuts that the governor had in his budget, but the amount of money. And we offered some solutions from just different ways of doing it and to cut it back a little bit. And one was to go to the highest level, 500% on the school lunches for all. And that would be a family making over $155,000 and with 4 kids, and then I think it goes up to 182 with 5 kids and over 200. And they would be taken off, and that money alone would bring in $112 million biennium or each year. So that's $224 million, and that was roughly where the cut was from the governors. That would have funded the pension, it would have covered the UI, and would have helped us to bring some money back. And that's at the highest level. They still would have received breakfast. But we were happy to get the teacher's pension through. There's some more work to go forward on that, and I'll be looking at bringing a bill forward that will also give them a little bit more flexibility. The Q-Comp thing was important. I had a great meeting with Carrie Pop about just overall teachers, but listening again. But the Q-Comp was one of the things that was brought up, and I think that's very important when we work together and we're trying to solve these problems. I think it is very helpful that we're communicating and that we're on the same page. So I appreciate when I've reached out or the different groups to talk to. I will say my door is always open. It literally is, because in our new building it's a cube, so I don't have a door, but it is always open. But I do think it's important. The literacy piece was important, and so was gaining some more local control. And those were some things. We still got a lot more work because we need to see this money get down to the classrooms, the teachers, and the students. Because ultimately, that's where we're going to see the success, and you're going to see the success in the scores. It was, like Zach said, very proud to be up at the Capitol and the good work that you guys are all doing here in Lakeville and our students, and very proud of that opportunity. The other thing that we were able to prevent from happening, which probably is a big deal, is statement of economic interest that has to be filled out if you're a district employee at an administrative level. I think that is something that is paperwork, but it goes back and was considered a good win. And then the other one, I was fortunate to have a bunch of bills go through this time, and all of them were bipartisan. But the one that I'm pretty proud of is lock boxes for all schools. And there's a grant which I would recommend you applying for. And the reason this is important is for school safety. You can put it on the backside of a school building, but when seconds and minutes matter, we can get our law enforcement, our first responders into the schools if something unforeseeable would happen. So I was able to work with Representative Green and from Edina on that bill, and so I'm very happy with that. The other areas, I think we got a little bit more work to do. There was some information going around about PSEO program and how some of it is, some of our kids are falling through the gaps, and we need to make some improvements. We will continue to work, and my understanding is the principal at North is very invested in this, so we will connect and we'll try to figure out some language. The best part of what we do is being involved in talking with you. The best bills that we see come forward are the ones where we're trying to solve a problem and we're listening to the people that we have the pleasure to serve. So if there's ever anything, please let us know.
Questions, anyone?
Yeah.
Director Farbone?
Please. I'm curious of both of your opinions on this, but on a federal level, past the House, it's in the Senate, and it's called a big, beautiful bill, but a part of that I understand from what I've read is school choice, and I believe they've got like $5 billion earmarked, and if my figures are right, I think that's about 100. There's a math teacher out there that'll correct me, I'm sure. I think it's about 100 million per state. Number one, do you think that's going to fly federally? And number two, if it does, what kind of impact do you think it'll have? Because I'm assuming the money will come to the state, which is you folks.
Let me jump in on the chat, thanks. Well, thank you, Paul, and I'll remember next time to send a memo that tough questions are not allowed. I'm just kidding. I very purposely try not to follow what's going on at the federal level. I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Obviously, we're paying attention, but right now there's a lot of speculation going on. We do know a particular bill passed the House in Washington, D.C., but we also know the Senate has some thoughts about that. What I can tell you is this: at the state level, locally, we're fighting for every single dollar that we can bring to our districts on behalf of our schools, teachers, and the communities that we represent. And should there, for any reason at all, be some sort of shortage to the state of Minnesota or specifically to Lakeville schools, you can believe we'll be right back up at the state capitol in St. Paul fighting to make sure that is backfilled, and so that you all aren't having to jump through hoops to try to find a way to, without much notice, address your budgets. I'm an optimistic guy. I don't necessarily foresee that happening in a way that would be very dramatic and very quick. I would hope that people will be more planful and mindful of our schools and the time they need to plan their budgets and forecasts. I think over the last couple of years, we learned some hard lessons when we mandated a lot of expenditures without giving districts time to plan for that. We put a lot of school districts into deficit. They're still struggling with that. And voters are getting a little bit exhausted when it comes to wondering why and how their districts are finding themselves in tough positions. And so our job is to relieve that burden, to help you all, whether you're a school district here in the suburbs or greater Minnesota or in the Twin Cities metro area, to fight and defend your budgets, allow you to do what you need to on behalf of your kids, teachers, and your communities. And so if that were to happen, we would step in and take care of it. But I'm hopeful that whatever bill does pass won't automatically see some lack of funding to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars that nobody was planning for. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a question, Zach. Maybe
Sure.
you can, on the cuts that we're looking at for special ed, do you know why it is that special ed seems to be the target of cuts? I mean, we're seeing it now. I believe there was another cut earlier that we discussed in prior financial meetings or reports. And again, as you're saying, there are mandates that are related to special ed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just losing more money, which comes out of our general fund, essentially.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing about special education is the mandate largely is from the federal government. It's not even necessarily from the state government, which is our argument. So if you're going to mandate this, you should fund it, right? The same argument we've made regarding some of the legislation that was passed here the last couple of years. I think largely because it's not as well known or understood as some of the other aspects of funding, but it's a large piece of it, and it's a little bit easier for folks to manipulate further out down the road when it comes to funding in order to try to balance the budget needs of today. It did come down to the cut was either going to come from the special education cross subsidy or it was going to come from the funding formula, whether we were going to keep it flat or even see a slight reduction. Special education was the area that they decided to make that cut in, at least for the foreseeable future. And I know it's difficult, especially for large districts like this one that do serve a lot of families and children that have special needs. And it's a hefty investment, and rightfully so. We want to take care of those students and those families and all the people that take care of them as staff members here in the district. But making sure that we're mindful of the financial situation that puts districts in is important, and that's why you're going to see us continue to fight to fund the two really important things in my mind, and I think Jeff would probably agree, which is providing districts, if we're going to increase funding, providing that funding in terms of the funding formula and the special education cross subsidy, because that's where you need it most, and it's where you have the most flexibility to then decide how you utilize those funds. Because I'm sure Superintendent Baumann would tell us the needs of Lakeville schools are a little bit different than the needs of Farmington or Egan Apple Valley Rosemont or Prior Lake or New Prague. And so if we just get the money to those that can make the right decisions on behalf of our students and the staff in our districts, those dollars will go a lot further and be a lot more impactful.
And I would just I would just say we are looking at a $6 million deficit, billion down into the future here. We had to make some cuts on this budget, and we had to work together. The House was 67-67. That's why bipartisan worked. The Senate was 34-33. We're divided by one vote. We are going to have to figure this out as we go forward. So I would just tell you, make sure that the House is in order, and there's going to be some more cuts. But hopefully we don't have to make the big cuts because we did what we did here. And so, I mean, I don't mean to be gloom about it, but there was a lot of some tough choices. And these bills didn't come out where we're all happy about them. And I think that's called compromise. And there's different things that were given. And, the UI piece was a big one where we wanted to see that funded because we didn't want to see districts being held onto that one.
I'll let anybody else have a question before I go again.
Or any feedback, anything that you want us to know that you're of particular interest, you're struggling with, any needs that we can address, feel free to either now or later email them to us, whatever you prefer.
Zach, we corresponded a little bit about, I believe you had co-sponsored the amendment. Welcome, Director Thompson.
Oh, I thought you skipped because you knew we were here today.
I think you co-sponsored the amendment to allow, attempting to amend the statute to allow boards to renew a capital levy. Do you know why that didn't make it across the finish line?
Well, it's because I wasn't convincing enough, apparently. I supported the one that was passed prior, and I supported this one just because I've been in your shoes. I know that sometimes school districts need some flexibility, and I know we want to be inclusive of our communities and make sure that we get their feedback and their input as well, but I also know that many districts found themselves in a particularly budgetary, financially challenging situation, and I thought affording them a tool in the near term would be helpful. And so I'm hopeful that that's something that we can continue to have conversations about in the Capitol. It is a bipartisan initiative, and I'm hopeful that that is a flexibility that we can afford in the future. But I do also understand why folks would maybe have some hesitation about affording a school district the ability to do that without necessarily having to have it go to voters on a ballot. So I think in this district, you all do a phenomenal job educating the public, getting their feedback, having listening sessions, and obviously taking things to voters when necessary. But I think sometimes too, when we vote you guys into the positions that you're in, we're also instilling a bit of trust in you to make those determinations and the calls that we need you to on behalf of our students and schools and teachers and the financial situation of the district. So I trust you all enough to have that ability in the future, and maybe someday you will if we're successful.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. You can
We're going to escape while we
go
can.
get some sleep, I guess, right?
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your work. All right, we're going to move on to the Arena's annual report and 2026 budget. Mr. Berquist, if you would.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here this evening. I am Joe Berquist with the Lakeville Arenas. I just have a little presentation to give you an update on where we've been this year and where we're at on our plans. I know you have a lot on your docket tonight, so I will move as quickly as possible. Everything is in your packet and online for the public to see, so I'll breeze through some of these without too much, but anyhow, let's get started. There we go. I like to start out everything for the public's benefit is we are a joint powers agreement between the city and the school district, which means I report to a board. One thing unique is we do not operate, our operating funds have never had to dip into city or school district funding. Since 2007, its inception, we have been able to cash flow the facility. Even after COVID, we did not need any operating funds. Now, debt service, you all help with debt service as well as the city. Whoops, I went the wrong way. We have been very successful since COVID, and I like to point out my staff. We have 7 full-time staff members and 3 key part-time staff members. None of this would have happened that I'm going to be talking about a little bit without them, and they are crucial, as well as our partnerships. The city owns the buildings, and you both share the debt service on the new facility at Hasse, as well as the new pavilion rink, or not the pavilion rink, but some of the remodeling and so forth we've done. LHA is a major partner for us. They are constantly helping us improve the facilities. They're paying for part of the pavilion rink, $1.5 million. They're putting $85,000 towards that debt. They purchased a brand new dryline training facility for $180,000. They just purchased scoreboards for $280,000, so they are very valuable partners with us. Other partnerships that are key, Heritage Figure Skating Club has been a part of the contributions. The Glenn Hasse family recently upped their naming rights and provided $250,000 for the naming rights. Alina Health signed a $100,000 naming rights agreement for the new pavilion rink. And South Metro Rental, I'd like to just touch on them. They do a trade with us, but we do thousands of dollars of rentals, especially with the work we're doing outside. So, and then again, the Chamber of Commerce is very involved. They promote us. We work with them on a lot of different projects. We have a lot of public events. The biggest ones, last year we were fortunate enough to get the Minnesota Gophers and Bemidji State playing at Hasse Arena as part of the Hall of Fame game, and that was really exciting to a packed house. Figure Skating Club puts on a show every year. We have annual Skate with Santa, and Hockey Day Lakeville is a very big fundraising program for Lakeville youth hockey, but all the proceeds go to the Hendrickson Foundation and so forth. None of that stays with Lakeville, so that's a community giving, which I think is you don't see that very often in hockey. Usually they hear fundraising, it's all for us. But they are a unique group. Next year we are getting you probably heard that we're having an international youth tournament. The World Juniors are coming to the Twin Cities next year, and with that we were awarded 2 divisions compared to most organizations which only got 1. So Lakeville is again high on that list. So our usage, Lakeville Youth Hockey picks up about 31% of our ice. Other rentals are about 25%. Public use, we have about 20% of that ice time is going for just general open to the public, anybody that wants to come in for open skate or open hockey. Heritage Figure Skating has 6%, high schools by 12%, and some of that is very valuable to us because it's before that 5 o'clock hour, and that helps support us quite well. Our arenas programs, our Learn to Skate is one of the top in the state. We're usually number 3. I believe we were 3 or 2 this year again. We have one of the largest. We've launched into our own programming. You see Learn to Skate had 1,085 last year. So that's grown considerably. We started some new internal mite leagues, which is for the little guys. And we've actually kicked off some camps this summer to fill that empty ice we're not utilizing. Overall, we kicked off, and following COVID, we decided we needed to increase our revenue to continue doing more and on our own, not asking for more. And these are just some numbers. Every area of the arenas has grown. Essentially this year, at the end of this year, we will have doubled revenue since COVID. And that's a big part of all the expansion and remodeling, and we've been doing a lot of things with that money. And it's just some of the things we've been doing. We've repainted the entire facility. That's all arena staff that did all that. Both facilities, actually. We branded them in the school colors versus neutral colors, as in the past. And you can just see by some of these slides, many of the things we've done. We've renovations, the locker rooms, new camera systems, video board wiring. We donated $30,000 for light show installations. And really, we had to buy a new Zamboni for the outdoor rink. We had to, we're doing adding a whole bunch of locker rooms and warming houses and so forth on the pavilion rink ourselves. And we've done a lot of landscaping projects, but ultimately that's where all this extra money is going. It's going back into the facility and back into the community. But more importantly, I think most importantly, we are transitioning to a full-time arena staff. Which now puts full-time staff members on site whenever anything is going on. In the past, it was almost all part-time individuals, and just the care of the facility equipment is being cared for much better now, and I think our customers are far more taken care of. So you all have a copy of the budget, and that's really what I'm here for, is to submit that budget. For your review or comment on it, and any other questions you may have.
Director Anderson.
So I'm the person who serves as the board member, and I just want to compliment Joe. You have done a very good job across many years, as I've seen with reviewing the budget, just keeping a very tight budget, and with your goals of increasing revenue, you've found ways to really take care of the hockey community here in Lakeville. So I'm just very proud of the work you've done, and as a hockey parent, want to also compliment you. So yes, the budget, Mr. Bauman was at the last meeting too, but tight budget, well run. So
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, Director Thompson.
Just a
Hold up, Joe.
Oh, one question.
Joe, just a quick follow-up question. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have
No, you're good.
hearing
You're good.
devices.
So I saw the budget that we're projected about 2.3 million or so, and obviously significant revenues from the past 3 years of or 2 years of 1.1 or something like that. So we're able to double it. To level set expectations is how much more are you guys expecting to go? Because as I think about additional revenue, I think about additional costs for our community and external partners that are trying to rent and borrow and use a facility. So, is there a forecast of these facilities? Like, there's an opportunity of $5 million, or is there an opportunity of $3 million? Is the 2.3 something that we can expect to be consistent now that you're going to have a full-time staff, now that you're going to have whatever? Because we're not adding more buildings. So.
No, there's actually quite a bit more room. One of the things that's helped us with this expansion is going from all 3 sheets are now year-round. And that's where we drive a lot of our extra revenue to put back towards the community. The winter time is full, but so we still have a lot of room throughout the year, so we will continue to see this growth probably for several more years. And yeah, it will continue to grow, especially the new pavilion rink. Because we're going to be doing a lot of stuff for the community-wide with that in the off-season, from graduation parties to concerts. Panaprog is using it this year. We're probably going to be doing some pickleball, so we're really excited about the expansion there to be able to make it available to all the community versus just hockey or just figure skating. So, all right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Board will be approving that budget at the next meeting, so it'll come before the board. All right, safety and security. Is it Damian Nelson?
Good evening, everyone. Board directors, Superintendent Baumann. Thanks for the opportunity to talk again tonight. It was just a few weeks ago. I introduced you guys a little bit of another safety layer, but this one's going to be a little bit different, and I'll walk through that with you guys. But it was fun to hear about the students capping off their school year and going off to what feels like a summer, an eternity of fun and all those things. But for us, it feels like a 4-week window to jam a square peg into a round hole, to be honest with you. And I know our district office team can relate to that. I want to talk just briefly a little bit about what I'm going to cover. And we know that safety and security is a top priority for the district. That hasn't changed. That's remained one of our top goals and priorities in the entire time that I've been here. But it's important to talk a little bit about, I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about the comprehensive security and safety plan. What does that actually look like? But I'm gonna get a little bit more specific and granular in intention around physical security. So understand that there's a lot more layers, there's a lot more partners and things that go into making sure you understand that full comprehensive approach that we have. But I don't represent all those layers, and they will be in front of you, I'm assuming, at some point in the near future. I do feel like a little bit of a disruption to all the budget conversation, so hopefully that breaks it up for you a little bit. So as you guys kind of know, there's really no single overarching thing that a district can do that would represent, we hit that checkbox, we're safe, everything's good to go. And the interpretation and understanding of safety as it relates to us is we've got a perspective from staff caring for our children and looking out for them. We've got district office teams that focus and fly at 50,000 feet and look at how are we doing what we do? Are we doing the right things? Where do we need to apply pressure? Where do we need to focus? And also that sense internally for everyone, that meaning is a little bit different. Some of it is satisfaction through seeing there's parts, there's pieces, there's things out there that we know are protecting us. And some of it is an internal feeling that I understand it, my best interest is kept in mind. It's that feeling we have inside that this is a good place to be, which significantly contributes to the environment that we know our kids will succeed and go on and grow. And that's ultimately our goal. We don't want these efforts to be super visible and present. We want them to be in the background. We don't want them to be super visible because that's not a distraction that we want to have in our buildings. Now everyone has access to social media and watches the news, and we know some of the intensity and some of the emotion that's driven by these things. And part of tonight is to make sure we talk a little bit about what some of those things are that are out there. And understand this is the end of the school year and we're talking about what we have in place. But our commitment to community is not just our school day. Now that's been a large part of our effort because of I'm going to walk you through a little timeline and information of where we are today and how we got there. But our commitment exists within our communities too for all the facilities use, and we have an enormous amount of things happening in the schools in the mornings, during our school day, in the nights, and for sure in the summers. So that being said, I'm going the wrong way. I'm going the wrong way, I think. Sorry. Which direction is forward?
Your guess is as good as mine. There you go.
There you go.
I'm really
There,
not touching
right there.
anything. I'm really not trying to. I gotta go back one. My apologies.
Which chart do you want?
I want comprehensive security plan next.
There you go.
Thank you. Maybe I'll just leave it to them. Okay, so I mentioned a little bit about comprehensive security plan, and there's an enormous amount of partners. But when we talk about it, encompasses district-wide programs. I talked about that. We have early school programs and activities through night use and facilities use with renters. Welcome. So, but one of the parts I want to talk about this is as it relates to tackling a comprehensive plan. That means having the ability to intersect potential risk and crisis anywhere in the continuum of issues. From early detection, when we're seeing behavioral changes or some red flags, risks in content that's surfacing, searches that are happening on computers, to almost uncontrollable scenario where all of a sudden an issue is in front of us. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the prevention side. It's not what I'm here to talk to you about tonight, but it'd be remiss of me not to at least say there's a lot of work that goes into that. And I mentioned a lot of those partners, and if you look at who's responsible for this, we know everyone is. As a school board, you guys have a commitment to safety, and all the departments have some level of participation in support of our safety initiatives. But it ranges from IT to our student services departments and our core teams that represent our crisis response teams. And when you think about some of those things, if I was to just list a few, we're talking about SEL work, mental health and behavioral teams, our school counselors, our psychologists, threat management, threat assessment process and procedures, the student intervention strategies, and lastly, our inclusive environments, the things that make us feel like we belong, the things that make us feel like we're welcome in this environment. So even though I'm talking to you about things that are very specific and they feel like they're the hardening of schools and they're the physical security aspects, no, there's an enormous commitment and a lot of work that goes into that early detection and prevention side, which ultimately is our priority. And in the reactive responsive, which I'm going to get into next, that's really the work that goes around some of those like physical barriers driven by systems that prevent exposure or vulnerabilities that reduce time or the ability to respond. That's really the physical security parts that I'm talking about. And those are potentially the uncontrolled environments that aren't staffed by people where we have some of that risk or potential exposure. Just a basic example, we don't want people roaming our halls during the school day in any of our schools without having been vetted or expected to be there. So we have barriers and things, the inability to get into the schools and access the schools without working through that vetting process. When you talk about teams, tools, and partnerships, it's, for example, I mentioned the crisis response team. So we've got sort of a few of us in our respective areas in those disciplines that focus and respond and react to some of these things. We're sort of the data collectors of seeing what's happening, what's potentially escalating, and circulating around in the schools that we have to either develop plans, initiate response for, or support the schools and get on site, just depending on what the potential issue is. So again, it's those dedicated teams and making sure that we have that support structure in place if we're needed in the schools. But again, I mentioned that there's a lot of partnerships, there's a lot of resource needs, there's a lot of things that happen. We have to rely on other departments, other specialty positions to make sure that we're not an exclusive group that runs around and tackles all this stuff on our own. We need to leverage all these people in their areas, whether it's teachers and the amount of information they have. Their connection to the kids is critical. We don't have that. Or the psychologists who do that mental health support and behavioral evaluations and those things. So, do I dare touch this? Oh, you already did it. So now I'm going to get into that little granular approach. This is the physical security. I'm going to mention a few of the things that we have. This isn't absolutely everything, but these are really the highlight pieces that I'd want to make sure that we get a chance to talk about that do some of that protection and support that I was mentioning earlier about sort of the uncontrolled areas or some of the tools we have to make sure that that risk and vulnerability isn't breached. So visitor management and access, for those of you who have students in our schools have experienced this, but this ultimately is the vetting process that we have to make sure that if someone shows up and they're not scheduled to be there, or even if they are scheduled to be there, we have the opportunity to evaluate what the reason is they're there for, potential risks that may be associated to some of the visitors. We can, for example, track, we can input information in to flag potential visitors against court orders of protection and different things, legal things that would not allow them to be on school property or not allow to have contact with students. So when we think about somebody just coming in and having access that shouldn't, now it's a partnership piece with law enforcement and some of the legal teams, but that's certainly how we do some of those protection and vetting to make sure that if someone is in the building that they're supposed to be there, and we can document and validate that they are in the building if we ever have to take any level of emergency response. Communication systems, these would be the things you guys expect. You've got our PA systems that obviously they're used on a daily basis as just part of our normal routine to, potentially saying we need a student to come down or some announcements from the principal to the students. Or in emergency situations, the capacity and capability to make sure that we're connecting with the teams to give them information as it relates to what the school is experiencing or some of the protocols we need them to follow. In addition to that, within the communication systems, I'm going to talk a little bit about timelines in a future slide, but it was making sure that we had consistency through the district, and one of them would just be communication tools. Specifically, all the same equipment as it relates to just walkie-talkies, a simple thing that we know exists in every school and every district for the most part. But years ago, they were just purchased on their own. They were, buying things from Amazon or Radio Shack or different stores, and there was no consistency or ability for us to track and monitor how do we bring that communication need together and make sure if we need to reach the buildings, through integration and other things that we could actually do that with good quality equipment. Card access and control systems. This isn't new to the district, but at the time when we started initiating a lot of our new lockdown system, it was one solid central system that was sort of the brains and the hub of all the information movement that we had, including card access. But this system ultimately allows us to leverage users and access folks that come and go through the schools at different times. So we can set all the intervals, all the access and permission levels. We control different aspects, locations throughout the building to make sure that if someone shouldn't have access, they don't have access to those things. And again, it's closing those gaps of vulnerability and risk to make sure that there isn't unneeded exposure or uncontrollable exposure that we can't manage. I do want to mention one thing to you guys. I heard in one of the last presentations about the grant for lockboxes. I don't want to squash some of their great opportunity, but all of our law enforcement in Lakeville have direct access to our schools currently. Our system, we plan to integrate our system into theirs, so they have the capability to get in any time to respond to our buildings if they need to. Thought that'd be important to note for you guys. Multi-layered lockdown system, cameras and surveillance. The reason we bring that up is that's a pretty common tool that we would expect to see to track, monitor, investigate, and research issues that we have in the schools. But when I started in the district, we only had 4 buildings through the entire district that had any level of cameras, and they were kind of spotty at best in some of the locations. So making sure that we have a minimum standard and an expectation that we essentially could track the movement of an individual from anywhere in the building to make sure, which is going to play a role in our lockdown system for that investigation and that evaluation to determine what the risk is, where the risk is, and doing that evaluation. But as you would expect, we've got runners in the schools, we've got things that they need to look at based on staff and student interactions, and it's a great resource and tool to make sure that they can, in real time, either watch and observe or go back and investigate issues that they have. Multi-layered lockdown system, I'm going to go more into detail on that, but there's just some talking points and specifics that you're going to see in a video next that I've started to show, I think, 3 times already. But and then burglary and intrusion systems. You know, when we talk about ensuring that we have consistency through start to finish, from sun up to sundown, we've got low occupancy times throughout the district where we've got limited staff and they're in there. And then we have times where there's no one in our buildings. So we want to make sure that there's no ability to get to our buildings. There's no concern that there's someone lurking or looming in the schools that had entry or access to the buildings. So we've got that system in place. So really that now sort of touches from that sun up to sundown, ensuring that we have tools and systems to make sure that we can monitor that stuff. All right.
Director Thompson.
Question on the physical security space. Do bathrooms fall under this category, or is that another page in your slides that you'll be?
Bathrooms?
Yeah, bathrooms, locker rooms. What kind of security protocols do we have in place in those kind of spaces that are a bit more private?
Oh, sure. I see what you're saying. So as it comes to surveillance, obviously we don't pursue any surveillance in bathrooms or locker rooms. You know, if you were to look at sort of where the capability of putting surveillance in is, would be anywhere someone could essentially observe a space without violating any privacy or concerns against that, we would be able to place cameras. But for those reasons, they're not in bathrooms, they're not in locker rooms.
Are you thinking about lockdowns?
Yeah,
Like,
well,
can you lock
no,
down the bathroom?
not lockdowns, but I guess it's like, what are we doing to? Is your scope of responsibilities also include bathrooms? So while we may not have cameras there, does your team ensure the safety of students that go in and out? And the reason I ask is that I believe that in Lakeville South, you've got one SRO who is a male, and obviously that male can't go into the female's restroom when there may be situations in there for whatever, like for vaping or I don't know.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, does security, physical security, does bathrooms fall within the scope of your responsibilities? If not, which is fine, does someone else have that covered?
Yeah, so here's how I'd speak to that. The buildings have on-site security staff that they're either patrolling the halls, they're helping support the SROs, specifically in incidents where they might need access to a male going into a female's locker room. So they'll work with each other in that sense to make sure that that capacity or capability is done. But one of the things that isn't listed in here is we do have vape detection in the bathrooms that provides notification to the buildings in the event that the system triggers. So they have the ability to potentially watch for some of the concerns that we know happen in the buildings by systems monitoring, and if it's physical presence is needed, they work together with that security team on site to make entry and, investigate.
So to confirm, we've got devices in there that can capture things that shouldn't be going on in the bathrooms, from smoking and vaping, and then you've got protocols in place where there's adults that are supervising and ensuring and walking the grounds that nothing's happening within the bathrooms at the middle school, high school levels, and so forth. So,
Yeah, correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Oh.
I mean, let's be candid. I mean, if it's happening, it's happening. And I think, you're saying it's not happening because we have protocols in place. Is that true?
Let me just interject here. I don't think he said nothing is happening.
Yes.
What he said is he's not responsible on what the protocols are. The challenge we have actually is how much security can we afford to put physically on the ground. I know that there can be access control to the we call them bathrooms, right? There is that admin. For APs, principal, other staff have the ability to, I think your term was make entry, but it is not perfect. I know some schools have badging. I know some schools lock bathrooms during certain times of the day. I should say districts. I believe we're understaffed in that capacity, but I do know that there's concerted effort, and we kind of know where the spots are too, which is another challenge that I think you have. I can talk to you about South all day long, but I just want to be clear on the fact that it's not nothing going on. There are things going on. We do know that.
So then do we, and I apologize going down to the rabbit hole, but do we have, are we tracking those infractions so that we are looking historically to say, okay, it's getting worse and we need to do something about it? I mean, wow, good that we've got a vape machine there, but if people are still vaping, the vape machine's there, it doesn't, I mean, if we're not doing anything about it, then why do we even have the machines?
My understanding from talking to principals with vaping is that they're putting the cartridges down the toilets. And that's the bigger issue. It also has a financial component to it because you have to do repair. As far as incident tracking, that's all part of our required process. Once you identify that you have a problem and in a specific area, our mitigation, like, it's limited because you, in my opinion, you need physical presence, or you need to lock it off. And locking it off has another component to it of actual, just legitimate use of a latrine or a bathroom, right? So.
For another day, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. Let's try this again. There we go. So I want to walk you guys through a little bit of a timeline, and this is, I'm not going to say this is old news, but obviously with the replacement of the board, we did work through this process through these years that we were going through this with board updates, but I'm going to try and sort of condense this and make sure you guys just have some perspective that we're extremely proud of the work that's been done and the progress that we've made, both from staffing and initiative and protocol and response. But by no means is it done, because the culture, the climate is ever changing. The technology and the resources are improving on the response side, but they're also changing on like student use side. So to assume that we're always going to be able to capture and be able to say we're effectively where we need to be, it's kind of a moving target, for lack of a better way to explain it. But this is just, again, a little bit of a recap of where we are today and the kind of the timeline that we got here. So in 2018, I joined the district, and correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent Baumann, but it was the first grounded full position to fly at that 50,000 mark and just say, all right, a lot of effort's been done. The accumulation of security and safety efforts were done by admin teams, just a group that was put together and trying to make progress. So the introduction of my role into the district was to start to say, all right, what's the data? Where do we need to be? How are we going to get there? Have intentional time and direct focus to make sure that we're headed in that direction, and we make that progress that's needed. And certainly at that time, it was recognized that Lakeville was just exploding. There was so much growth, so much coming up. The district clearly was going to be one of the big districts in size and in growth. So making sure that focus and that priority was there was kind of the launch of the first position. So between 2018 and 2019, the discussion was, the evaluation and the assessment of what's the district doing, what are some of the things that we need. We recognized we're going to go out for referendum, and referendum was going to include the lockdown system, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But in addition to that, it was also recognized that additional staffing was needed. This really wasn't a one-person thing, and we needed expertise in some of the behavioral and threat assessment support. Now, that work was happening, with the SEL, behavioral support. A lot of those things were in place, but to make sure that it was captured through the lens of the safety needs and some of those safety risks and things that we were seeing change, that was the introduction of the threat assessment coordinator to help capture that and ground that team a little bit further. The surveillance system rollout and timing was one of the initial notices or sort of needs in the district was inconsistency, specifically within that coverage. And conversations that I had, in this previous stint with Superintendent Baumann was there was an idea of where we were headed with things, and that included having consistent and streamlined infrastructure to make sure that when we made this leap and this change, that we would have certainly what we needed to make sure that it would support the integration and the growth in the direction we were headed for security. So it's only worth noting in there, one, that it didn't exist in some of the buildings, and it was, like I mentioned earlier, to capture that, we need a minimum standard of at least being able to track and monitor the building. In 2019, obviously, the work on what our approach was going to be for the request for the board to approve referendum for our community was captured. it was in fall of 2019 that we went for that staffing increase, and as well as the lockdown system, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which the board approved and subsequently went out to the community, and the community was on board in our initiatives to make further progress in both of those. In 2019 and 20, lockdown infrastructure design and coordination and final planning. Now, it was a lot of work. It was evaluation of each building. Each building had to see where some of the risks were, what, like just the material and the construction of the walls and things for the ballistics and stuff we were going to put in. It's bringing on board the architectural firm Wold, did a lot of the design work for us to make sure that as we got through the planning stages, we were able to make sure it met code and would support the weight of installations and different things that we were going to be doing. Now, really, I would say it was a portion of 2020 where we're starting to launch the construction, but really through 21 and 24, all the security construction and implementation was happening. And when you look at, we leaned pretty heavily, and if there's any silver lining in COVID, it was that we had the opportunity to have access to the buildings during the school year for construction, which is not normally done. But we leaned pretty heavily on that, like I said, to launch all of this construction. So there's an enormous amount of work that went into, tearing out walls, rebuilding this stuff, putting in all the infrastructure, the cabling and pathway, all the stuff that we had to do. And I'm not going to sequence you through all the buildings that we did, but ultimately the idea was, how could we streamline this the fastest to do it as quickly as we could, to leave as few gaps so we didn't have buildings with such a long lag time from one being online to another waiting to come online. That was unavoidable to a certain degree, but that was looking at where do we have consistent buildings like Lake Marion, Cherry View, and Lakeview, all are like footprints and patterns, so we had an opportunity to sort of streamline and effectively launch faster there, or Oak Hills and Eastview. So that was kind of the positioning to make sure that we could do it the fastest over the course of that 3.5 years or so. So now I'm going to dive a little bit into this lockdown system for you guys with a video. In Lakeville area schools, we have a multi-layered approach to safety and security. Our #1 goal and focus is always about prevention. We have many systems in place to monitor for red flags, risks, or warning signs long before they become a serious incident. It starts with our anonymous tip reporting system. There's an app called P3 that allows students, staff, and families to easily report any concerning activity or behaviors they see or hear about. School and district staff receive those P3 reports and are able to communicate back and forth directly with the submitter and quickly investigate, research, track, and take action as needed. This allows us to determine how to best support a student or take action to an escalating situation. We have digital security tools that monitor different types of searches and emails that are being sent by students. This technology monitors and looks for concerning content that might indicate risks or warnings that we can then respond to before things potentially escalate. We have dedicated staff and school resource officers trained to use these tools and investigate and respond to any concerns that surface. These prevention systems are part of our behavioral threat assessment management strategy. Threat assessment and anonymous reporting are best practices recommended by agencies like the FBI, Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, and U.S. Department of Education. But we also have physical safeguards in our schools in the event we have to react to an incident. Adding on to our existing safeguards like the visitor management systems, we are installing things like police buttons, protective panels, security window film, strobe light indicators, and magnetic door locks in classrooms and designated safe refuge spaces. Installation started in our high schools, and we're moving through all of our remaining schools. In an emergency, a teacher can press the police button, which will immediately send an alert notification to police to respond to the school, which significantly improves police and emergency service response times. Simultaneously, magnetic locks on classroom doors and designated safe refuge spaces will activate so anyone posing a threat cannot get in. And emergency notifications will sound over the school's speaker system while visual strobe lights flash as well. There are ballistic panels that not only provide physical protection, but also eliminate direct line of sight into classrooms. Our district was one of the first in the country to install many of these protections together to function as one multi-layered system. They are protections we hope to never have to use, but protections we know are there when needed. By putting all these many layers of security in place, we've been able to greatly improve our ability to identify, react, and respond to potential threats and emergencies in Lakeville area schools. I don't touch anything yet.
Damien, can I ask you about the P3 app? I feel like I've seen that before, but can't remember when. How do we inform parents and students about the app?
Yeah, so there's another support function to the crisis team that manages that more closely, but what I can tell you is that that's accessible on the district webpage. It's communicated out. I don't know what intervals throughout the year, but it's made accessible to them through our online platforms and some of the communication that goes out annually.
Do you have any idea of how many reports we get through the app, like on a monthly basis?
I'm not. I would be guessing a little bit if I did. It's a lot. It's frequent. There's a lot of information that circulates. I don't know, Michelle, if you have any. Yeah. We can come up with some of that information and get back to you and let you know just what that frequency is.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, I was going to ask a similar question. As I'm not familiar with the P3 app. Maybe it's on my son's iPhone, maybe not. Probably not, because I check his phone. Is it on iPads, on all the students' iPads as well, so that they can click and do whatever they need to do to make a report?
I'm pretty sure it is. I can double check that for you as well. Okay. But the app is downloadable for anyone if they choose to put it on their devices.
Yeah, we can take that offline and look at the data, because it would be interesting to hear or see their kind of responses, and then what kind of trends that we're seeing over the past couple of years, and if they've become non-physical or more emotional trends and so forth. But I do want to just circle back, because I am not very well versed with the referendum that passed in 2018-ish or 19-ish or so. Ballpark, how much did we allocate towards the security of how much of that referendum was security focused? Because I know I heard that I read that it said supporting staff as well. I'm trying to crunch some numbers in my head briefly. Does anybody know what that was for?
Bill.
The dollars that were put into the physical buildings was $14 million.
But we didn't ask for a levy for 14. We asked for a certain amount for over a 10-year period, correct?
No, it was a one-time.
It was a one-time for $14 million for the implementation.
And then we invested all that over about a 3-year period.
Okay, got it. And so then what is the ongoing maintenance cost for this tool, or if there is one? I mean, the physical stuff is probably, but there's basic upkeep of the tool. I don't know if there's a subscription fee that we have to pay for P3. I don't know if we do any kind of negotiation, because if it's the only tool that we use, and then lastly, can we jump to another tool? Is there a competitor where we can actually do competitive bidding, or is this a one of a kind and we are locked in with this particular rate and this cost and this tool? Mm-hmm. So just, again, I don't know, so I'm just asking.
Yeah, so what I would tell you is, our threat assessment coordinator does manage that system, as well as the contracts and the other opportunities of tools that are out there available to that. They've done that vetting process. I can't speak to it, but I can't say when, but I understand that team will certainly prep them with some of the information when they get in front of you guys to circle up on this stuff specifically, but they'll have all that data.
So we don't have that information right now?
Yeah, okay. I don't, yeah. And this video was made, you can see we started with the high schools, but it's a few years old, and it was during the implementation process. So each time we've layered this out, we didn't want to miss the mark on making sure that they understood it wasn't just physical security, it was also some of the supporting roles and other things that were out there.
Yeah, I mean, from the video and just from the initial observation, I think anything that we can do to ensure, bolstering our safety and security, having an electronic tool, an online app, or whatever it may be. You've got the facilities and the physical components. I think that makes sense. I think we also want to just make sure that, cost-benefit analysis-wise, now the $14 million is spent and it's done. What is the ongoing expenditures for something like that?
Yeah, so if I may, I can tell you with P3, there's a couple elements to it. The simple answer is yes, competitive bidding process is a thing. What you have to manage in all this is, if I tell you it's P3 today and I tell you it's Q4 tomorrow, you lose the fidelity of the reporting system. So that's one of the factors that you have to take into consideration with it. Almost every software model that I know of in public education is based on a per pupil basis, and it's a fee per student. For example, $2 per student or $10 per student. And obviously there are competitors out there. We landed on P3 a while back. I don't recall the other systems we looked at, but we'll certainly bring back to the board a layout of what that is exactly. The ongoing costs, I think, are more in our camera and our server support for those kinds of things, our access control systems. The actual lockdown system is, the reason it was purchased on a one and done is because it does not have those standard kinds of upkeep levels that most of the systems that you do buy have. It also is physical structure more than it is software structure. Or electronics. So where school districts, I think, get ongoing costs is when they just do cameras or they just do access control systems, because those change, the softwares change. We do have access control in this district that was brought in around 2017, 18. I don't remember exactly. I can tell you the story behind it, but you don't want to hear it. Bottom line is our surveillance system is what was, I think, hugely lacking. A lot of disparity there, a lot of inequity there, also no baseline. And I think Damien talked to that, but that has a maintenance component to it. Yeah.
Just to clarify, because I think Brian was asking this, so the physical system, the lockdown system that was put in place, we're not obligated to pay some sort of subscription fee for any programming related to the company that installed that, correct?
I'll go back and double check, but I'm not aware of any. There's no programming. We do have, I think, I can't recall what it's a discharge system in the
SIS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those get checked. I don't think the maintenance on them would only be if they were discharged.
Yeah, those are right. Obviously, you'd have to replace them if it's released.
We don't need some special software in order to make it so you press the button and it calls the police.
No, the one component to this, though, it's jumping a little bit ahead of something I was going to tell you guys. But when it comes to this system, from its design, it's important to note that it's leveraged or leaned against like a fire alarm system. And the reason that's relevant is because a fire alarm system has the ability for any device to be addressed, meaning if anything should happen within that system, the system knows exactly what device that is and where it's located, so it can communicate and report back, your failure is here, your issue is here, or in a lockdown system case, if it's activated, it will say your activation was here. So there's just a monitoring feed, just like our fire panels have. In fact, it's monitored the exact same way and communicated either through activation or troubles and needs and support needs through that way. But it doesn't require someone to go in and upload firmware and do those things.
Okay. Sure. Treasurer Thompson.
So the only two things that I want to just highlight is that part of their data analytics component, being able to leverage P3, getting that into Campus Infinite, and being able to see holistically what's going on at a macro view for our district would be something that I think we should consider as well. Or maybe Campus has a P3 component like that where we might be able to discontinue it, since all students pretty much have Schoology or Campus on their phones or iPads in some capacity. And then lastly, I appreciate these overviews that we've done over the past couple weeks or over the past couple months, but I think the biggest issue for me, and just from a school board perspective, is I see the things that we're doing, but I'm not seeing the cost of what it takes to do those things. And so while I see the security components and we're showing all these good things, for me to just get that whole picture, it would be good to know, what is the security budget for our school district? And if you had that budget and that budget code, we should be able to very cleanly go down line by line and say, this subscription costs this much, this thing costs this much, the staffing of our SROs costs this much, and our overall security budget costs this. And so while you're not, I'm not saying you're not prepared, but we're not reviewing that today, but for me in the future, it would be good to see that holistic picture as we are reviewing our 26 budget that's going to have $300 million. And now I'm not saying we need to get down to the intricate details every dollar spent, but conceptually at a macro view, it would be good to know, what are we spending on this budget? Because we'd be able to, articulate the subscription cost $250,000 or not. So for another time.
Yeah, absolutely. We can organize that for the future. As far as you getting a little perspective on that, just parts and pieces of the system, a few things that I want to point out about it, though, are that when you look at the things that it streamlines and where it has an enormous amount of benefit is there is an immediate notification capability that exists for notification to law enforcement. So that activation on that police button sends a signal to dispatch as soon as it's pushed with the information, what the location is, the room that it was activated, and that law enforcement is needed for the lockdown system activation. So, when you think about other practices or protocols that you have, oftentimes you find that someone is responsible for that. Information has to get to someone for them to pick up the phone, dial 911, and make sure that if any information is known, it moves to the right place.
Director Baker?
Do staff have access to when that alarm goes off so they know where in the building that occurred?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
So when it comes to, without going into an enormous amount of detail, the first activation of any button reports back to the operations center, and the operations center is where administrative teams go in to essentially navigate and investigate the incident, to broadcast information, communicate to staff, recognize and see where the issue had potentially started.
So it has to go through someone else before staff are notified?
No. So if you're talking about the specific location.
So my thought is like the alarm goes off in 3rd grade, right?
Yeah.
How do all the other teachers in the building know that something happened in 3rd grade? Because then that's telling them maybe stay away from that part of the building. Where are my other students that may be in different parts of the building? Just the logistics of that, because if it has to go over the speaker for the elementary school, then we're also losing time.
So here's how I'll respond to that is anytime one of the police buttons is activated, an audible message over the PA says the system's been activated, as well as the visual aspect of the blue strobes. So the idea of the exact location isn't what's broadcasted over there. It's immediate notification to them that they need to follow protocol, activate their buttons, get into their secure spaces, and await further information.
Okay. And the strobe has to be part of the system? I'm sorry.
The what?
The strobe lights have to be part of the system?
Well, we have situations where people can't hear the audio, so it needs to also have the supplemental visual with it as well, just like our fire systems do.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Director Nicholson?
Brian, to your question, page 42, 715. In regards to training for staff, like what kind of training do we give staff, especially new staff coming into our buildings? Do they get an overview of this is when to use these buttons, this is when to hit this button, this is when you can use that button, this is when you should notify? Like, how do you go through that process with especially new teachers to our district?
Yep. So we have access. So every year we do a new teacher training. My portion of it is to cover this system and explain parts, pieces, activation, exactly what you just said. When staff report to buildings for the start of the school year, a building-wide refresher happens as well, where cover, again, not just the lockdown system, some of it is protocol, other emergency response tactics that we have. Then throughout the course of the year, they're doing lockdown drills to make sure that sort of the competency and the understanding is there as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about some other upcoming trainings that we have just in the near future. It's just in a slide a little bit later. If that, okay. Oh, where'd it go?
I think we lost the slide.
I didn't touch anything.
Oh, click it. There you go.
Oh, there we go. So a little bit about system sustainability. I want to walk through a few things specific to this, and it's dedicated monitoring in-house support. We actually hired, and this is a split between facilities and IT. We have a tech person who was part of the installation vendor, or the vendor who did the installation actually was brought onto the district. So when we talk about knowledge and understanding of programming, system maintenance, system support, installation, all those things, we actually have someone in-house who understands and knows the setup and design of the system. And additional to that, we have monitoring. So on a daily basis, IT has it set up. So if there's any system failures, specifically with things like servers, some of the other things that they monitor and track, they get notifications, whether it's this system or the card access systems or any other things. So we have real-time ability to look at things we need to address versus staff reaching out to us and saying, hey, we're having some problems. We've had them all day long. We didn't have time to talk to you. Now, they do reach out to us, of course. We want them to do that, but we also have the ability in the background to make sure that we're looking at the active use of the systems. Self-diagnostics and notifications. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but like a fire system, anytime a part or a piece of this goes into trouble, whether it's a communication failure, a device failure, like a cabling gets grounded, the devices aren't talking back to the panel, it goes into a trouble alert, and then we get the notification real time just to let us know that a part or a piece of one of our systems is not talking to the rest. And that's where I was talking to you guys about it being like a fire system. All devices are addressable. So the system knows where each of these are, and if there's a problem, it will report back to the panel, and then we'll get alarm monitoring notification that there's system issues. This is just a note about the question was kind of supporting the service and maintenance of this. We do have funding earmarked within LTFM and just in deferred maintenance for the general sort of immediate needs that we have, whether it's a replacement part or like some of these troubles or issues that we talked about. District renovation planning, system inspections, and preventative maintenance. Much like our fire systems, we do the same things. We have annual inspections of all the systems to make sure they're functioning on top of our daily monitoring of any potential issues that we have within the systems. Future system integration and upgrades is obviously there's work to continue on what we're doing. There's other integration interests that we have within the system to make sure that other devices are talking, whether it's vape detection or camera systems, to sort of lead and drive intelligence-led review of potential issues. That's the system identifying parameters that we set to capture video or other needs that we might have, so it's sort of waiting there for you in queue. Now these are future upgrades. We're making sure we're flushing and vetting this thing out fully as we have it up and running for 1 full year in all buildings. But that's just some of the details of where we're headed. So I'm going to talk a little, so resources and next steps. This is a little bit about what was asked about for training. But current resource availability, one of the things that staff have access to, even though I talked about intervals where they would have the presence of one of us to say, here, there's Q&A opportunity, obviously, but when it comes to what can they leverage themselves in the event that they want to learn more about it or get a refresh on it, videos of all the parts and systems are landed on our staff intranet that talk about system utilization. And it describes parts and pieces. It has a video of me walking through the activation kind of from start to finish. It talks about police buttons, the card access systems, just the functionality of all. There's about 6 or 7 modules that are available to staff at any time if they want to refresh on any of these parts. Some of the next steps include emergency response team development. This is furthering, this isn't just a lockdown situation. It's building the teams to do some of the evaluation and understanding that are building specific, because what we know are the designs are different. The staff availability and staff sizes are different in each of the schools. So the idea of who they have access to, what are some of the protocols and expectations they have, just for example, if they wanted to review where are all the building critical shutoffs for gas, electric, those types of things. We want to develop a team that has the capacity to do those evaluations, those discussions, sort of at the team level. Yes.
Quick question. So when you're talking about that, are you available for building staff when they go through a drill? Like, do you come in,
Yes.
do a drill with them so then they can kind of find like the areas that, you know, we need some more work around or some more discussion about how to make our plans more, you know, workable?
Yes, absolutely. In fact,
Okay.
since we started the implementation or the launches of the buildings that went live, I've been present at almost every lockdown drill that they've conducted. So a little bit more drill practice and rehearsal structure development. It's part of that emergency response development. But what we're looking at doing is we don't want to present or have any gaps where staff have not experienced some level of, you know, the finger on the pulse of security. That's not necessarily all lockdown, but it's helping them time out and have intervals at every month having some touch point where we're talking a little bit about security, whether it's a lockdown drill, whether it's a fire drill, whether it's one of these emergency response teams meetings to talk about recapping and evaluating incidents that they went through, where they need to improve. It's really providing that structure to make sure that it's consistent through the district, and there's intervals where staff are always having some level of exposure so we don't have those gaps where folks would say, I don't remember how to do this. It's been a few months since we've done a drill or talked about, you know, anything that they're working through, security specific. Tabletop exercises fall right in line with that, and that's really providing scenarios where we can introduce things like, we want your team to work through an example where certain staff aren't present. Who are your next in lines? What are your plans to make sure that you've got support systems built in, and how you're going to manage and navigate with just different sort of scenarios and variables that we can throw in with them that they can do those evaluations for. District-wide program and collaboration for planning. That's a lot of effort has been done, you know, particularly in our evening areas, and looking at consistency through our sort of security continuum, if you will, relating to making sure that we've got the resources, we've got the people, and we've got the protocols and plans in place for response. You know, that can range from facilities use from our renters, community folks, to our athletics teams and stadium events. Lakeville Partnership Police Training. This is one that we did a couple years ago. This is actually starting tomorrow. But over the course of 4 days, every law enforcement officer is going to go through a scenario at our Lakeville Elementary School where they do a response drill. Each officer will have 3 drills where they run through that has a different configuration somewhere in the building, and our admin teams are going to be present to learn and understand how to navigate the dispatching of the arrival of law enforcement through the detection and identification of a potential assailant, and leading and guiding them to that location just for that practical experience of understanding for a law enforcement side, what does it feel like to come into the building and see these systems live and going, and administration to be able to understand the activation of the system, the utilization of the mic broadcasting, the cameras, all the research and evaluation through the course of an event that gives them the kind of real-time experience. Obviously, there'll be no kids present for this. This is exclusive to law enforcement and our administrative teams. They're signed up on intervals throughout the course of the next 4 days to attend with the principal and their core teams to go through this exercise and experience. I think that would be a real beneficial opportunity to have the ability to navigate, utilize the system without the stress or worry that there's consequences if it isn't done really successfully or fast. Well, that really wraps up kind of the core pieces that I wanted to talk to you guys about. As it relates to the system, obviously there's a lot of questions. I don't know if there's any more, but.
Director Cameron?
Yes.
One thing you've noted, and I think others, but I would be interested in learning more about our district's approach to prevention, risk mitigation. Obviously, some of the things we're talking about tonight, hopefully, would be a last resort, right? These are more like response rather than prevention. And so a couple of things I'm interested in if we do is, well, one, when things are reported like through P3, and I know you're not in charge of this, so I'm just talking to the world. When things are reported in like P3 or other channels, how are we supporting students who are maybe going through struggling times to get resources to them? to hopefully address their needs before issues become more intense. I'm also interested in how and if we train all of our adult employees to recognize signs of distress and concern in our student body. We know students, they might reach out to a counselor if they're struggling. They might reach out to the gym teacher. It might be the janitor. And I think if you look at like evidence-based practice with the topic that we're talking about tonight, making sure that kids have those systems of support well developed is important. So I'm hoping that our district takes a comprehensive approach to that. And then finally, I know we've heard reports, I think, last couple months about like the data that we collect around FastBridge, like with the SEL, and also the student experience surveys. I'm interested to learn, how does our district take those particular data sets and look at gaps or areas of concern within the district at the building level, grade level, whatever, and how do we look at where might there be pockets of concern, and how do we allocate resources to address that as a district? So that's for a different time. I'm interested in all that, and there's probably more to it than that. But my other question, and Damien, this might be more to you, is I voted for the referendum. I forget what year it was on your slide. And I believe for a lot of our systems, there are lots of school districts using them, like P3 or our card access system. To my knowledge, I believe we're the only school district using this lockdown technology. And I believe that's like where the bulk of the 14 million went. So I'm curious, like, when we want evidence-based practices, how is our district approaching that particular levy, that particular technology, to make sure that we are buying products that are evidence-based and tested? We can be a leader, and that might be one reason why we're the only ones using it, but I also want to make sure we're not an island. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I understand the parts that you had asked for, and I think the plan is to bring that team forward at a certain timeline when the district is pursuing some other internal trainings. And I think it will clear up a lot of all the requests that you have. And I can speak to it loosely, but not to the level that they can answer your questions in confidence.
You can't answer those. So her last question around being a leader versus being an island.
So can you kind of explain, how do you mean?
And correct me if I could be wrong on any of this, but I believe for many of our systems that you mentioned, like the card access and the P3, there's many school districts who are using that. As far as I understand our lockdown system, we are unique. We're the only school district in the whole country that utilizes this technology.
That's not correct.
Okay.
We are the only public education K-12 system. There are some private systems or private schools that are using it. And to the issue of island or leader, a lot of leaders are on an island. So I will do my best to try to paint that picture a little bit more holistically for you or any other board members, and also bring in our other team that deals with the very important questions that you're asking, because it's a yes and, it's not an either or from my perspective, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, sorry, I should have said, I know we're the only public utilizing this system. And so I think as our policy is around evidence-based practice, I just want to continue to make sure that we are vetting products, that we are going out for bid on anything, even close, well under this amount, but certainly for a $14 million project, and hoping that's what we did, and I'm curious to learn more about that.
Okay.
Director Anderson.
Thank you for shedding some light on kind of what's happening on the physical side of things. I just want to kind of reiterate some of what you said and highlight. I think this is important for our community just to be hearing. I think about safety very broadly, and especially when we think about as you kind of started with the evidence-based practice being more prevention, mitigation. We have failed levies related to those kinds of efforts, and that I think is what is probably most disappointing for me, is knowing how strongly these kinds of efforts get supported, and that is the kind of can feel in some ways can feel like an illusion of safety, like everything is okay, when really that is the like, if we've gotten to that point where something like that is happening, to me, we've failed as a system. So I like that it's the most reactive thing that we're doing, but I just want to encourage our community to think about what we need to be doing on the prevention side of things, which means getting more behavioral specialists in the schools, which means having more opportunities for intervention before anything like this happens. So I appreciate you highlighting that. I hope we do have more education on that, and we need our community support behind that. So kind of thinking about a strategy for not just the bells and whistles technology, but the people on the ground doing the work that prevents us ever needing to do anything like this. So hope we can aim for that. I do have a question, so I'm not just commenting. If, this is all in capital levy coming up for vote, potentially if the board approves to put that on the ballot this November, what is going to happen if the community does not approve this capital levy? Like, how does that affect our budget, essentially? Like, what would happen to this system / would we have to make cuts elsewhere to continue to have this system run, even though the community's not supporting it, let's say?
That might be a Bill question. Yeah.
Or if you have any.
One of the things that I would mention is like I said earlier, we have identified sort of the minimum sustainability through deferred maintenance for things that are already installed. Where I think we're going to encounter some troubles are future expansion, renovations, and remodels and different things where we have to do some new installations. Then it becomes somewhat problematic thinking about what that fund has done to support us to make sure that if and when we get to that situation that we have the funding capacity to do those things. In addition to that, there's some of the infrastructure that it does have a shelf life. So there's, whether it's servers, some of the hard equipment that we have that are running many of the systems that would need replacement as well. We're not at that point right now. A lot of this stuff is brand new and it's gonna last a while, but that doesn't mean we aren't gonna have failures throughout. So I will defer some of that to Bill, but I do think that would be one of the challenges if that capital levy didn't get passed.
Okay. I think it's good to put it out there. For people to know, how does this actually impact us on every school level, so that people obviously know exactly what they're voting for. But.
And one of the things in that same sort of interest I would mention is that although these tools that I've talked about represent a pretty specific portion of physical security, I hope you do understand and recognize that they're used by our buildings and our teams on a daily basis for that investigative, that research information. They're not exclusive to, we wait for something to happen and then these tools become effective. They're in use every day, and they're even in use by our teams that support the evidence-based systems and staffing that we have in here. So they're using them too. This isn't just exclusive to the tail end of an incident happening.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other questions for Damien? Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Holmgren, if you would.
Chair Swanson's, members of the school board, Superintendent Michael Baumann. Thank you for having us tonight. We get to talk about next year's budget. We had given you some preliminary numbers back in April. Now we have a draft budget to bring for you tonight. We do have a balanced budget, and we'll run through the details. But first of all, I just want to recognize my staff. Many hours have been put together over the last couple of months to put this budget together. So I want to point out, first of all, Jack Baker, of course, our controller. If you look to the back side of the room, our senior accountant, Jill Daly, would put your hand up higher. Okay. And then accountant Jackie Dulac, and then we have accountant Tiffany Steer. Shelby's not here tonight, but she did a lot of work putting this book together, and we really appreciate their efforts all around. Now this enrollment projection, we've been using this all year. We have not changed this. We have been, when we look every week at what's happening with our enrollment, and our enrollment as we come through this year is right on track, what we're seeing here. So we expect next fall to be about 12,001. Yes?
I just kind of want to go on a little tangent here with the enrollment, because I have some questions, and I think they're going to be future things that the board may want to address. But I've been doing some research into some of our numbers with enrollment within our district, looking at some of our protected populations, particularly special education and ELL. When I looked over the past 5 years, and I've got this data back over 10 years, but I just want to look at the past 5 years. When we look at our enrollment from 2020, we were at approximately 11,918 students, or give or take some through that. When I pulled our special ed numbers for that year, we were at 1,788 students. So when I look at how our enrollment has grown from 2020 to the current year, and then our special education numbers have grown from 2020 to the current year, while enrollment grew approximately 1,000 students, our special education numbers grew over 271 students. And that was just based on our October 1st Child One count, which was an increase of over 27%. The reason I bring this up is because I'm looking at that just over the past 5 years, and I'm also flipping through this book and looking at our staffing models for our teachers. And the reason that this matters to me is because we had over 20 positions in special education that we weren't able to fill this year. And it's not just that we can't find the people, it's that the people aren't applying. So why aren't they applying? And I think that's an important question that we as a board need to figure that out too. Because if our numbers keep increasing like that, we're not going to be able to serve that population of students. So when I look at like the past 5 years for our special education numbers, and I'm breaking them down by building, we really haven't increased our staff to account for the 271 students. So then I'm looking at our special education case numbers, like caseload's too high. And when I look in comparison to other districts have caseload parameters that they put on, much like we did as a district when we looked at elementary class load numbers. We said, okay, for this grade, we're not going to go over this number, and for this grade, we're not going to go over this number. I would really like to see like a report from our special services department on what their recommendations would be by program and level of need based on caseload numbers. And I think as a district, that's something we need to look at, because I'm looking at this going, this is unsustainable. I've seen this trend over 10 years. Now I'm looking at it growing almost 30% in 5 years. If that doesn't concern you, it should. Because that's not only like trying to fill our classrooms, but then I have to think about what's going on within our classrooms. Why are we identifying so many students? Is it our MTSS model? Are we not providing the right interventions? I mean, there's lots of questions that we could dive down and go down this rabbit hole. And like I said, it's a rabbit hole. I understand. But I'm really concerned about that when I look at our staffing models for next year, and I just don't see the increase in special education teachers to account for this many students that are being identified. Another area that I'm really concerned about is the ELL numbers. Now, I remember, gosh, I want to say it was like 3 weeks ago when they stood up here and they said how many languages are spoken within our district. And I remember that slide specifically because it was a lot. And all of our ELL numbers for next year, as far as staffing goes, have decreased. So then I look at how are we expected to get less kids qualifying for special education and our reading scores up and our academic scores up like the board and the district want to do if we're not providing services for kids that can't even speak English when they're within our buildings being taught during the day. So those are just some really valid concerns that I have. And like I said, I've got all the data. I would love to sit down with the team and look through it. But the SPED and the ELL numbers for staffing for next year, like if this is our model, I know that we're really tight on money. But we're never going to see those scores go up if we can't serve the students that are in front of us right now.
Director Cameron.
Just one more thing to add to what you said. I've had numerous questions in the last 2 weeks from parents of special ed students who are concerned about our turnover with our special ed teachers as well. So, I mean, I think Dr. Baker, in addition to needing to hire more, the turnover is something that is costly to the district. And also, if we want to improve academic performance, having constant turnover for our kids isn't a recipe that will result in good results.
Right, and I think it just leads to, these are all the questions that I have. So why are we having constant turnover? Why can't we fill 20 positions? Why do our numbers keep increasing? And if our staffing isn't increasing with the number of special education students that we're serving, I can see why they're not going to come here, because it's too much for one person to do. I just think that I would like more information and more data about that, and I would like to see some recommendations brought to the board about putting parameters around specific caseload numbers.
Director Thompson.
Director Baker, I hear you. I do. And I think part of the budget exercise as a board that we have to approve, and while Mr. Holmgren, Mr. Baker, you guys have done a great job in getting us to where we're at, I think there may be a desire for more participation by the board or more knowledge gathering from the board on how the budget actually is formed. And so while you guys have had in the past shared that there is a cycle, you talk to the principals, you talk to the staff, and they provide you the recommendations of what they need for running their respective site. And so while we hear it from our constituents around maybe some of the support gaps that our constituents are facing that we hear, which may be a discrepancy from what your team might be hearing as the principals that are sharing, this is what we need, this is the staff that we need, we can get by with this. And so, I mean, it's not like I'm assuming you're making this up as you go. You're getting feedback from teachers and staff for this proposal. But I would also am aligned with, while this is the number, I'd love to get to a place where we have zero-based budgeting, where we can actually then, you can quantify, you can say, this is how much we're spending for supplies, this is how many teachers that we have, this is how much we're spending for our teachers in this particular class, and you start to horse trade within that respective building on the top priorities and whatnot. Now, it's a longer exercise, but that is an exercise that have seen successful on the corporate side. But I think there's two different things going on here. You've got a recommendation by the administration as they've talked to the staff and their teachers. And then we've got a different ear, which is what we're seeing, what we're hearing from our community, and there seems to be a discrepancy. I don't know how to solve that, but I don't know, that's what I hear.
Yeah, can we ask Bill? I mean, how do you come up with the numbers as far as staffing? And because I'm assuming you're not coming up with the numbers saying we know you can't have more special ed teachers.
The business office is not coming forward with a recommendation of what the staffing should be. We are counting the staffing and we're creating a budget with the staffing that we receive. So the true staffing budget is coming with a discussion between the HR department and the principals in the buildings to look at the staffing needs in that particular building. We then receive, of course, what the staffing needs are, and we put the budget together accordingly.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that this is a decades-long problem that I have the data to show that's been going on in Lakeville. And we, as a community, as a district, as a board, at one point made it a priority that we were going to look at classroom numbers for elementary school and cap it at a certain point. I'm looking at our numbers right now for special education and saying we need to have the same conversation. And part of that's because these programs are mandated by law. Right? Like there are federal laws, there are state laws, there are everything around special education here. So if our intervention groups are smaller than our special education classroom small groups, that's a problem because that's no longer individualized instruction, which it says at the top of the IEP, individualized education plan. That is something that's a little bit more, right? So I just think we need to look at things a little bit closer. I'm just asking for more information on it and what the plan would be to help relieve some of the pressure on our special education teachers to reduce the size of the caseloads. Are there ways that we could be more creative with our programming? Are there ways that we could serve our students by providing more LEAF support or more paraprofessional support, so we're not putting so many kids in restrictive classrooms that we need to cap it like 8. So I just think we need to have a bigger discussion on that as a district and as a board, and I would love more information on it.
Just so I'm clear, you're not asking Bill, you're just asking
Nope.
generally. Okay.
Nope.
Yeah, we can definitely put that on the agenda for something to discuss. Director Anderson.
This kind of reminds me when we were going through the budget cuts, and I don't mean to bring up a very awful process, but like the emails we would get from so many different people about why advocating for their own positions, and your heart goes to every person who emails and everything that was written to us during that time. And so I think maybe just because I'm not trying to minimize what you're bringing up because I think it's really important. And at the same time, I also think there are so many priorities in the district. What we have talked about, even establishing our own priorities as a board, there are many needs, and so to me, what I would add to that is there a way that we can see the priorities of the district, Mr. Baumann, from the 50-foot or 50,000-foot view, to at least have an idea of what the really critical needs are and ways that we can figure out as a board how to support them as we move forward. So not trying to minimize the highlighting of the special ed, because I think that's super important, and there are multiple priorities that probably deserve some attention. So not for us to dive deep, but just for us to see what's going on in different departments that seem to be, what are the critical needs from each department at this time? Kind of like when the principals were talking to us, what they want, like what's their, well, it would be fair to have the elementary principals be able to say that too. So what are the needs that each department is kind of saying?
Could we jump back to budget?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at page 10 of the budget, and just to make sure that, I know, but I want to just make sure I understand the education point, and I think you are, no issues in having further discussion around that, but we are projected to spend $40.3 million on special education this year, and then $85.7 million for non-education, elementary and secondary education. And so we're spending half of that. And so I would want to question the $40.3 million, its effectiveness, its efficiency, if 25% of our population is in this space, but we're spending over a half of our, compared to the other 10,000 students that we have. And so maybe I'd love to add that on top of your discussion, if we can.
Back to you, Bill.
Okay. Gonna shift gears a little bit.
If you could just solve all those problems.
I wish I could solve all those problems.
Throw it in your
right?
budget, that'd be great.
Talk a little bit about legislative changes. I know we had a talk earlier today about that in general, but here is how it's affecting directly Lakeville area schools. Now, the formula allowance, we are getting a 2.74% increase, which we're pleased with, because when they first started talking about budgeting at the state level, they looked at pulling that automatic inflation increase out, but they left it in, so we're looking at 2.74. So we're very pleased with that. The other thing that came up just overnight, so this number was not in the plan we sent out over the weekend, but a compensatory aid. They are going to hold us harmless. We have about $555,000 of new revenue that we didn't expect. So that's new as of today. So we're very pleased with that. Now, of course, on the other end, we have talked about this in the past. The special ed transportation, a 5% change is about $273,000 for us. That is a decrease in what we get now. And next year is going to 10%, so that will be double that amount for next year's budget. The student support dollars that were brand new 2 years ago, we're slowly increasing. That's what we used a lot of this money for our increased counselors at our high schools. That is now being decreased by $246,000. I think one thing just to mention though here, even with the negative 246, the numbers for this year are actually bigger than they were last year. So I want to keep that in context. Okay, just the increase got lessened. And then library aid. We have enough library aid to pay for two of our media specialists, but that is being decreased by $77,000. So this is kind of the summary. There's really no other financial pieces that change for us except for what you see here. So you can see the compensatory aid pretty much covers the other three negatives.
So the compensatory aid, was that what we had assumed was going to drop by like 5%?
The compensatory aid had dropped by $500,000. And what they look at is they look at the number of students that are eligible for a free and reduced lunch. That's what generates those particular dollars to help support those students. That's where it comes from. These are restricted dollars. So the book you see tonight does not have that 555 in it, but it's not going to help our fund balance because it goes straight into restricted. So just to keep that in context. Okay. Okay. So when we look at our general fund revenue, you see that we are still seeing a $4 million increase. You see that at 2.9. Of course, that's bigger than what we just talked about, the 2.74, but that's because we have increased enrollment. All our new enrollment they do generate more dollars. So that's why you're seeing that more than the 2.74. Property tax, we've talked about this all year, where we're seeing an adjustment for a one-year adjustment there with negative $2.3 million. So of course that's going down by 4% in our property tax area. Our federal sources, after we've used up all of our COVID funds, we're back to about where we were before. A small decrease here of $36,000. And then our other, of course, the biggest piece here where that's going up is in investment earnings. So we're very happy about it. We have a bigger fund balance and higher interest rates, so we have a little more interest. And so that's helping fund some of our positions. So that's great news. But overall, we only have a 1% increase in our funding from the previous year.
So that's our net going into next year, is the 1% increase.
So I'm looking at your report, then your 2025-26 projections is 12,104 students. Is that is what okay? Yeah. And we currently have 12,029. So just an increase of about roughly 80-ish or so, maybe 75.
About 75
students. Yep. So how many FTEs are we needing to add for those 75 additional resources?
Well, that's not a simple answer to give you. As students come through our especially our elementary students, in each of the buildings, some grade levels go up, some go down. Some places we're dropping an FTE, sometimes we're raising. Actually, in our elementary schools, we're not adding any FTE on our regular programming this year. Okay, but there are a little bit of added staff at the high school at North because they have a relatively bigger enrollment than they had this year. So I can't give you a straight answer because it's different in every section of the building, of the district.
Yeah, that makes sense because you're gonna have some classes that are just not at capacity, and by adding these students, we get closer, and then some that might be higher. And so your staffing model here, then that you've had conversations with the staff and the administration. They've shared the number of staff that they feel like they're going to need for the fall, and so I don't know what the teacher change, the delta is from this year to next year, but we can get there later. That's good to know. Thank you. You do? Okay.
So just looking at this graph just real briefly, you'll see under the proper tax area, you'll see that decrease that we've talked about. But I think it's important to know that it's truly not a decrease, it's just an adjustment from the year before. Because when we look at last year and the lower numbers we had, the blue line there for fiscal 25 is too high. We received too many dollars. So truly this is the increase that we're seeing, but because of the adjustment we have to give back, that's why we're seeing the negative. But overall we are seeing increased revenue for the students that we have. Make sense? So then again, just as a look as a whole, you see where our dollars come from. You see that 69% of the dollars come from the state of Minnesota, where property tax bringing about 25% of the dollars that we use on a yearly basis.
All right, so now we will move into our general fund expenditures by object codes. So interesting enough, our salary and wages we're adding new positions, so that's going up by roughly 5.7%. That's with the step and the COLA increases for our staff. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, if salaries are going up by 5.7, why are benefits going up by 11.2%? That seems high. You would not be mistaken. So that number, I believe, is correct, and there are three factors in there that make up that much larger increase in salaries and in benefits than in salaries. So one would be the Paid Family Medical Leave Act that is being pushed through at on January 1st of 26. So this adds an additional 0.44% from January 1st until the end of the fiscal year. With that, we budgeted 0.22% in benefits for that piece of it on all salaries. Added to that, TRA is going up by 75 basis points. That is a very large expense. And then health, the 5% increase in health, between health and TRA alone, that makes up roughly $4 million of that $5.3 million change. So then we have our supplies. The supplies is going down, as you see, by 17.6%. This is mainly related to teaching and learning expenses. We are expecting about half as much expenditure in teaching and learning as is in this current year, so that makes up about 500,000 of that 1.1 million. Other expenses is related to insurance. So as far as our expenditures by program area, everything is going up as normal. The biggest change is in our special education on a dollar value at 2.7 million or 6.9%. The only two items really going down are building and sites, which is going down by 1.3%. That's due to LTFM. We have less expenditures in LTFM and we're expecting less expenditures in 26 than we did in 25. And also our administration is going down by 1.7% because we are not paying for 2 superintendents. Yeah. So we want to show this slide just to show the primary areas in which we spend our money. The 2 largest buckets are our elementary and secondary education as well as special education. They make up a vast majority of all spending within the district. And with that said, our educational portions of it make up 82% of our total expenditures going directly to students. So that's at elementary and secondary, special education, instructional services, and pupil support services, and vocational. Between all of those, it makes up 82% of our total expenditures.
Here we'll take a look at the general fund and our expected ending balances next June of 26. Our non-spendable, these are really our prepaids. Expect that to remain relatively constant from year to year. You see that our assigned dollars, though, that is what we're spending down. Money that we set aside this year into 25, of course, was the back-end loaded contract with the teachers. So as far as we're spending that down, and then it was teaching and learning and curriculum that was set aside for that particular. So you see that's falling. Our restricted stays about the same on a yearly basis here, running between $5.5 and $6 million. And then, of course, our unassigned, though, here is still growing, and that's what we want to see going forward. Even though you see our total fund balance there is relatively flat. But I just want to point out that the unassigned is growing. You see it here, the blue line is our unassigned balance continuing to grow, and you're seeing there the kind of grayish, the orange line there, assigned, falling down to the point where you don't even see it in the 26 graph, even though I think there's $60,000 in that particular place. So when we look at our unassigned fund balance, you see that we do see continued growth here, going from what we expect 6.3 at the end of this year, jumping up 1% to 7.3 at the end of 26.
Next. Go ahead. I've got a couple questions.
Director Anderson?
Just going to say, we just had that policy about the fund balance, so we're 7.5 was like where the flag would be raised, so we're approaching our 7.5, but are we cool with moving?
Compared to like 211,000, yes. I feel good at 7.5 personally, but again, we want to strive for 10%, which gives us roughly 3 months of expenditures in our unassigned balance. Obviously, with the assigned and some restricted, it could be higher, but in regards to the overall percentage. But for the unassigned, where we have full discretionary of where we need to deploy it for one-time expenditures or whatever in scenarios, yes, 7.5 would be great by the end of 2 years from now. I do have a question around fiscal year 2024, and I do appreciate the 2-year forecast, which is good. If you actually want to go back, I think 3-4 slides or so, so our actual budget for this year, we're anticipating to spend, I believe, $187 million. Is that how I am understanding this?
You talking about this slide here?
Nope, that's the general fund balance, the expenditure. I think it's a combination of both. I'm just trying to figure out the math or understand, because it gets a little clunky. Because we spent we're spending $187,000 in this current school year, correct? That is fiscal year 24? No, yeah. 25.
Okay, well, you're talking about 187 million.
Yes, I'm sorry, 187 million.
Yes.
Yep. That was last year, or is that?
Year that we're in, just finished.
That we're finishing, yep. So we're projected to spend $187 million.
Actually, yeah,
that's in 24.
24.
That was 24.
That was 24. Okay, so we're projected to spend $204 million.
Correct.
This year. Okay, got it. And so with the the 2.74 increase from the state of Minnesota, the state increases from 141 million to 145.9 million. Let's just make sure I understand that. Correct? Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing about a $5 million increase from the state of Minnesota.
Got it, yep. But then in your expenses slide, the steps and lanes from this year to the next year is like 5.9%. And so I'm scratching my head here, like how do we afford that when?
This isn't totally steps and lanes, okay? It's also increased staff going into the next year.
Okay.
Okay.
So, which we don't know what the increased staff is. I mean, well, because we just had the conversation, they get absorbed by some classes, and then we add some. So we're not adding like 50 more teachers, right?
Oh,
We're probably adding 5 or maybe I don't know.
There's definitely some increase in our special ed area. We have 4 FTE particular and another 10 paras as increases, so that goes into that 5.7. Okay, and we have some more support going into the high school using that student support dollars. So that shows up there.
Well, so I'm just, when I'm looking at the numbers, our revenue is 209 million, and it jumps to 211 million, so only like roughly a 2 million difference. Now, we are not getting $2 million from property taxes because we over received. So technically, if all things were equal, we would have received roughly $4 million. If we
2. Remember, it's going down 2.
Right, but let's say if we didn't have to give any money back, I'm thinking we would have gotten the 2 million increase plus the 2 from property, so an aggregate of roughly $4 million from a revenue side.
We would have saw about $5 million from the state of Minnesota, another $2 million from $2 million more than what we have here from property tax. Okay, so that's $7 million that we would have.
That we would have received.
But we didn't because the taxes are down.
Yep.
By 2.2 or 2.3 million dollars, but we have the 5 million. So overall, we're seeing that increase there of just under $3 million total for the year.
Yep.
Which is only 1%. We showed you 1%.
So what I'm trying to get to is that our revenues are roughly $6 to $7 million, but then our expenses are going to be roughly $8 million, and so that trend is not going to be sustainable. I mean, that's what I see. I mean, because when I look at our expenditures keep going up every year beyond what we're actually receiving in revenues in tax funding in general, and I'm glad we got to a balanced budget for this year. But I think that's what I want to make sure that in addition to special education, we've got we're mindful of what we're committing to from expenditures, because like the revenues are not, our expenses are surpassing our revenues.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you're looking at $11.2 million roughly just on salary, wages, and benefits is going to be our increase next year when the state funding. I mean, if we don't have, decreases in other categories, we're in pretty big trouble.
Just to recap, next year, we took that next year, we're going to see 3% increase from the state of Minnesota. We were told that earlier tonight. So that's more than we even received this year. We're going to not have a decrease on our taxes. We're going to have an increase on our taxes.
Sure.
Okay, both of those pieces. You see that right here, our total increase in expenses from one year to the next was $3.9 million. Okay, next year, the revenue will be more than that. New revenue in 27 will be bigger than 3.9, and we would not expect the expenditures to be more than that.
3.9% change.
The change in expenditures is 3.9%.
So, but we are having more taken out of special ed transportation next year.
That's already figured into here.
Okay.
Okay.
Plus, they have asked to form a committee to cut $250 million out of the special ed budget after that.
That's down the road. And
Yeah.
it's a blue ribbon committee to wax eloquently about, I don't know what, but we have to, we're factoring in looking ahead. And this is the standard problem across all school districts, is this revenue expenditure challenge year to year. And, you know, I know we talked about zero-based budgeting and things like that. Those work great in corporate environments. They don't work so great in ours because we don't have control. We have control of expenditure. Revenue's a little more dicey, and we're the only governmental entity that has to go to voters for revenue, and by Minnesota constitutional requirement, we can only use tax dollars. Okay.
I volunteer for that Blue Commission too, just so you know. It's on record. I'm volunteering.
Brian, your comments, I think you're just trying to say, as a board, we need to be aware of what we're going to be dealing with in the years to come. So,
I think if you remember too, last fall when we brought you a 5-year projection,
yeah.
You know, in 28, it pretty much plateaued off, didn't it? Yes, so we expect that to happen. So we're going to have to watch this very closely as we get in the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, now to talk about everybody's favorite thing, food. So, in looking at food service, I know the state has mandated the 3-month fund balance, or 3 months expenditures as your total fund balance. Right now, with this current budget, we are not meeting that. We need to come up with creative ways, and our director of food service is working diligently to come up with those creative ways to ensure that we can meet that requirement. That way we do not have to pay anything back to the state. She's very good, and I'm sure she'll come up with something just wonderful. So looking at the chart,
It's unfortunate that we can't use those dollars in other places where we might need them, special education.
Right.
So, question about that. So it's food service dollars, and they're restricted funds to
Correct.
spending on food. Is there any way we could start like the summer program where we're providing food for students? Because I know that's been an ongoing need within the community.
We are, our school district is not eligible to serve free meals in the summertime. Our free and reduced count is not high enough. So we have looked at it. Every year we look at it.
Okay.
At this point, we're not eligible for it.
So we need to get people to fill out the form, which is also tied to compensatory.
Correct.
Because I think there's probably more there than you realize. Just when I talk to 360 Communities, they run out of food every day when they're providing people food over the summer. So I just think that's something we need to continue to watch.
That is correct. I mean, that's one of the challenges of the free lunch program, is that there's no incentive to fill out those free and reduced applications, which does affect our compensatory revenue, which does affect our ability to initiate programs like the summer lunch. So it's just a challenge, but food service, our director, she is wonderful. She'll come up with some creative ways so that we can draw that fund balance down and be in compliance with state mandates.
I think the state of Minnesota, I'm sorry. I think the state of Minnesota also has some alternative collection method, but I'll go verify that.
Are you talking about for the applications, or they do? If I remember right, they base it off of the tax filings and basically overall wages. That's how they generate their compensatory numbers. I believe that's what they did, but
that's what they're looking at, and that's why they're just holding us harmless at this point. That's why we saw that $555,000 increase, because actually our dollars had fallen into 26. But now we have that back until they finish studying that to figure out how they're going to allocate those dollars to districts.
I just wanted to remind all of us of the student who suggested perhaps we could get rid of plastic utensils as an option for, where to spend some money. So.
But I guess just to make a note, if you're seeing in a particular building that's using a paper tray or some plastic forks, it's usually a staffing issue where we can't get everything washed, because we do have trays and we do have utensils in every building, and on most days they are used. Okay? Okay.
So looking at community ed, after the whole fiasco with the budget, They have started, they clawed out of the hole in 24. We're budgeting that they're going to be at 23,000 at the end of this fiscal year, and they're going to more or less triple that fund balance at the end of 26. At least that is what we are budgeting. So they are making fantastic progress and doing a very diligent job in their budgets and increasing their fund balance.
I'll shift gears a little bit just for a few minutes here, talking about LTFM. Every year we have to put in a 10-year plan, and I have to bring it to the school board so that we get authority to continue with our levies and with the revenue that we receive from the state of Minnesota. If you look on page 51 and 52, you'll see a little more detail than we can fit on the screen. So you can see where we're spending those dollars per building. And what I put on this slide here, you'll see, and I talked about it when we were here the last time with the facilities crew, what we've built into after 28, we have a 3% built-in increase in our health and safety areas, which fall under Damien's area, and we have a 5% for our construction, which is what we're seeing in inflation in construction materials right now. So we'll bring this forward again for you to actually take a separate vote than just the budget on our LTFM plan.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If I read the update that Superintendent Baumann sent about all the legislation that happened, there's something about roofing that changed, right? In what they approved? Can you, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you know about it.
Yes and no, okay?
Okay.
The LTFM program for larger school districts is different than smaller school districts. I believe there's only 12 school districts in the state of Minnesota that are allowed to levy what we need, and that's, we sit there. We're 10th in the state for size of a school. So when we bring forward, we put together the projects that we feel need to be done in these particular buildings, and then we have two sources of revenue, the general fund, which we get from the state of Minnesota, and then the bonding that we do to cover the other 2/3. And again, next spring, next April or maybe March, we'll bring forth some bonding for you to approve, and that'll be specifically for LTFM, and we do a 2-year bonding, and then we use it for the next 2 years. And then we levy, of course, through the Fund 7 to pay those bonds off. That way, we don't have a huge levy bill all at once for our community members. We spread that cost out over years. So you'll see that coming up next spring.
So this didn't have much.
And then back to your question.
Yeah.
At a smaller school district, they can only receive $380 per pupil unit. That's all they receive in LTFM. It's a relatively small number, where we are spending more, but we have the authority to do it from the state of Minnesota. I can't tell you how that came to be years ago, but we certainly are glad that we have it available to us to get taking care of the needs that we have in our buildings. We have aging buildings, and we have quite a few needs, but we are catching up. The buildings, if you go through the buildings, they're starting to look pretty good. But we have some, for example, this year we have a very large project at Kenwood Trail. They're getting all new air handlers put in that building and some roofing in that building. Another large project is, and we talked about this last time, but believe it or not, one of our newer buildings, Cherry View, we have a very big problem in our sewer system. Well, it's from that, okay? So we actually have to go in the building, open up the floor, go down
In the water.
6 feet, and replace that plumbing. So that's a huge job that's happening at Cherry View this year. But
Please
LTFM is
replace it
paying
now
for it.
before it breaks, because my poor kid was going to Cherry View when the building flooded with like 2 weeks left of school. It was a nightmare. Right, Mrs. Pop? Oh, yes. Right, yes.
Okay, well, we have found the source, and it will be repaired this summer. The elementary school's over now, so we can fix it.
So I think you said this, just to clarify, so the legislation doesn't affect us as far as the roofing?
Yeah, we were able to do that already, so.
Okay.
And would it impact, I know last meeting we voted on roofing for 917. This change in legislation wouldn't help with their roofing project, right?
Well, they were under the threshold that they could do it. Remember, they were spreading it over several years?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Bill, the Cherry View project, is that starting tomorrow or is it starting next week?
Well, I think it's Monday.
Monday, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
'Cause I think they still have daycare in that building tomorrow.
That's why I asked.
Okay, so just quickly looking at the building construction fund, I just want to point out right there under the column of fiscal 26, you'll see halfway down the sale of bonds there, 21 million. So you'll see that come later in the year. Debt service, of course, the only thing that runs through here is payments for the debt that we have in place. So we can, and like I've said in the past, we can levy 105% of what we need because not everybody pays their taxes on time. But what happens is we don't need a full 5%, and it builds up over time. So you'll see that this fall when we bring the levy forward, you'll see a decrease in the debt service fund where we'll be under levying. So that'll help our level our levy going forward. And you see that fund balance is growing up now to about $6 million, and of course we don't need $6 million, so that'll be a negative levy adjustment, just like we saw on the students on this year. Okay, just want to touch on the internal service fund. Of course, this is where all our self-funded insurance goes, both our dental and our health. We started this 5 years ago, and the fund balance has been slowly growing like we wanted to see. We want to get up to that 25% level before we can really help. But I guess just to make a point, right now, when we look at health insurance going forward, trend or market is running 8-9%. And as we told you, ours is going up 5%. So it's already helping us control some of these costs going forward. So we expect that to be up over $7.5 million at the end of 26. So positive, and it's a healthy fund balance for that. So this is just a snapshot then of everything put together. You can see on the top, general fund, you see that fund balance. When we put all the different components of the fund balance together, we'll be at 21.8. But we put, the student nutrition, community service, and so on, you see that we do expect a total fund balance of about $62 million. Overall, I'd say the school district is financially very healthy. We've made drastic improvements over here the last couple of years. So we will bring this back to you for approval in 2 weeks, and there will be a small tweak talking about that $500,000, and we'll point that out when we present that.
All right, Bill, Jack, and team, thank you guys for all your work. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Any board member reports? Kim?
So I just came from the 9/17 meeting, which was why I was tardy for this meeting, so sorry for that. But I did have like a few things that I wanted to go over that they talked about. One of the things that 9/17 is working on is called Bridge. It's a parent engagement program. They're hoping to have 3 sessions this coming year. Each will be offered at 2 different times, both in person and virtual, so parents have multiple options to attend. Their first session is going to talk about how they use story circles to help build community. Second session is going to be talking about Dakota County supports and services, and the third session is going to be introducing families to Nurtured Heart. One of the things that I was talking to that superintendent about, Dr. Favor, was if there was ways that we could partner with some of the things that we already have going. So even if we have parents whose kids are not attending 9/17 yet, could the parents still come and get that information? And yes, that's definitely an option. So just some of those things to think about. They also, we had a presentation from the superintendent on his progress on his goals for the year. I thought that was really interesting. One of the things that they talked about, or he talked about specifically, is how he offered 15, what he called was 15 with Dr. Favor. Just 15 minutes to meet with parents who were had a question or concern, so that he was meeting the parents where they were and hearing all of those different concerns. He talked about the apprenticeship program, the hiring of international teachers, how he's attending children's mental health conferences, and then this is something that would be available to our district too, is that he has completed the training as like a mediation person, so that he would be able to facilitate if there was an issue for us, just to help with that. And then one of the other things that we discussed was just student board reps. Each of the people that are on the 917 board are from one of the member districts. So most of the member districts have student board members that sit on their board as reps, and they've had a lot of success with that program, and I feel like it would be a wonderful thing to bring to Lakeville so that we could have student voice on our own board. I talked to 3 different districts before I left today just about the success of their program. Farmington is one that's had it for quite a while, had a lot of success, and they're willing to share some of the resources with us that they have in place, like the procedures, just so that we could look it over as a board and determine if that's a route that we want to go.
Brian, sorry.
Yeah, I last week I had an opportunity to shake 1,000 hands at our graduation. No, but as you all were there as well. But what an awesome experience, and being in just kind of it's a wow moment where our community helps and puts over almost 1,000 students into our nation. And 1,000 students from our community are moving into adulthood, moving into their next chapter of life. It's not like 150 kids or I mean, while those kids, smaller towns, but in general, ours, we've got 1,000 kids that we bring out into adulthood, which is fascinating. But super awesome to see. And so that also prompted a couple emails. And so I will bring it up and just share with the broader board that a couple emails around the logistics of where it was placed at, whether it be at Mariucci Arena, and other communities do that at their local stadiums and football fields. And so I would like for us to just entertain a conversation about that over the next few months or so, just to see the cost-benefit analysis of something of that nature. But overall, it was what a unique experience. Again, I've done this 6 times already, but again, it's fantastic for our community to be able to say we put out over 1,000 young students, young adults after high school. So that's it.
Director Cameron.
To add to Director Thompson, I know Carly, Kim, and Matt and I were able to attend the Lakeville Pathways graduation. I forget the date. But that was also great to have that special moment at Brackett's to celebrate those students. And there were some fantastic student speakers there that at the ceremony. So, and thanks to the district for putting that on. It was really nice. Also, at the end of May, I attended the Oak Hills Elementary Family Fun Night. My kids attend there, but it's such a great event, and I know many elementaries have kind of an end-of-the-year celebration, and just want to thank all of our PTOs for putting on these very time-consuming productions. I know our students and families really enjoy them and benefit from them, and so thank you to the parents and also the teachers who are there volunteering their time at Oak Hills, but also other schools.
Okay, I'm just going to add, I love the idea of a student rep. We've talked about that before. It's been awesome to attend all the graduations. This is like the best time of year, and the staff retirement. Just thank you to all of our teachers. And yes, this is the time of year where it's just such a pleasure to be a board member. So it's just a good experience to see all the hard work come to fruition and those graduates and those staff retirements. So thank you to everyone for being involved in that.
It's been a busy couple weeks since our last meeting. Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll jump into 7 reports and recommendations. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Superintendent.
I'll just say to board, thank you so much for your participation in all those events. It's very, very welcomed and loved. So thank you for that. Also, I don't think I got to Eastview today. I tried to get to every elementary school today because it's last day with kids. I'm never surprised, but I'm always pleased. There was, good class instruction still going on today. There was also a lot of outside time, and the weather cooperated because yesterday was not so no bueno, as I like to say. But today was beautiful, and the kids were out and running around, and it's great last day for our elementary, so just wanted to share that. And also, secondary will be done on Thursday. So come out and see what's going on. Maybe not in high school. No, I'm kidding. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Chair.
Director Thompson.
Yeah, any desire for a 5-minute recess? I don't know if the next two topics might be lengthier. Okay.
I said let's roll with it, if you're okay. All right. I'm going to give Superintendent Bauman some time off here because I think we've talked about this plenty, and so I think we jump right into it. We are looking at, for consideration, it is the approval of the resolution. We'll just take these one at a time. Resolution on page 157 to 158 of your board book packet. It's for the renewal of the 2015 operating levy. The specific details are in the resolution. The resolution is required by statute. So what we're doing, and I'll just kick it off. I would move to approve the resolution, which allows us to renew the 2015 operating levy.
I'll second.
There being a first and a second, is there any discussion on the matter? Director Thompson.
I am in favor of this levy as a whole. I think from what I've heard and as well as what I learned, there is significant value to our community for having this operating levy continue. From my understanding is that the curriculum or the classes for art and band at the elementary level, super vital, and there are standards at the state level that are necessary for us to have those kind of specialized skills within those elementary buildings. And now, if this does not move forward, we will have a gap. I'm not exactly sure how those requirements from the state will be taught, and who will teach them, and that would be add additional skills or additional things that are already on our teachers' plates. And so maintaining the existing resources for those skills and those requirements, I see a huge value add. Now, in addition to that, I think there is also high school classes or high school students, or I'm sorry, high school staffing that would also be impacted. I believe, I don't know exactly the number or however, I think it's 5 or 6 or something of that nature. But in general, part of this operating levy was to reduce class sizes. And now, while it may not be super impactful, because we have almost 2,000 students in each high school, and so when you displace 2 or 3 teachers, but depending upon the class, depending upon the topic that's being taught, that extra 3, 4, or maybe 5 students in a particular classroom might be over the edge. And so I am in favor of this operating levy as a whole. I do have another point, but I'll pause here and let other folks share if they have any comments.
Director Nicholson.
I would agree with you, and I think I say let's go for it. Let's move it forward. Right now, we're in a very good financial situation. I think we should continue that. I think this does not raise property taxes. This keeps us steady state. Steady state, I think, is healthy, and I think we need to continue on the trajectory that we're on, because we have a lot of things that we're trying to do. We have a lot of objectives and things that everybody has talked about here, and we need some investment to make that happen. So I say let's go for it.
I'll add in. Oh, go ahead, Director Cameron.
Oh, I was going to echo what Brett said, but also just to add for the community to make sure we're aware that this operating levy supports 14.2 full-time positions, and if this levy were not to be renewed, those positions would be cut. However, there's no increase to property tax with this renewal.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that's something I think we've discussed. There is going to be no increase. It's just renewal, maintaining essentially the finances. And I guess my concern would be, even if we don't cut it, that money is budgeted in. It's going to have to come from somewhere. I will note that I do have 19 letters from some Cherry View 5th graders encouraging us to renew this so they can keep their band class, and art. And while I'm not much of an artist, I am a band geek. And yeah, played the baritone for many, many years. So, any other, Director Thompson.
So I feel like I do need to share my other point of view, and the fiscally side of me wants to, not even the fiscally side, it's just the communities being able to have a voice in a decision like this. And while I feel the entire board and I think a community stakeholder, if they were informed of what this is and why we're doing it, probably an overwhelming majority of them approving this to move forward. But we as a board, we are, from my perspective, I feel that our responsibility is to ensure good governance as well as to be good stewards of our community's money. But I'm not 100% aligned where they don't have a choice in us saying, all right, while they did make a choice 10 years ago in approving this levy, I just don't feel aligned that they don't get to make the choice to vote again to continue this operating levy. It is over a $10 million investment over the next 10 years for art and band and high school class sizes to be where they're at today. And I agree, it's not an increase in property taxes. It's continued as is. It continues the programs as is. But again, it is in addition, not an additional, but it is $10 million that those that may not be here anymore, are continuing that will have to pay. So that's where, and I shared this 2 years ago when we talked about, was it renewing the $3.5 or $3.4 million? The state of Minnesota, through the elected officials that our state has elected and gave then passed the law to give the school board members the authority to renew a levy just once. And so while it came up through the ranks in that respect, I still feel that I feel like there's an opportunity that, like, where is their voice in this decision? So, go ahead, Mr.
Director Anderson.
I believe we're a representative government here, and I believe you said it in the meeting that I was not here. People elect us to make certain decisions. So, to your point, I get what you're saying. People are entrusting us with some of that fiduciary responsibility. So if you think it's a good investment, if you think it's the right thing to do and we should have it, we should continue, go with your gut, man.
Yeah, and I thank you. I would just add that not only are we elected, but Senator Duckworth and Representative Woody were here tonight. And I don't know if you were here for that part, but Senator Duckworth was kind of talking about the importance of us being able to make this decision on behalf of the community and that we're elected. So similar kind of thing. And they have also been elected. So people making these decisions at the legislative level to give the school board the authority are also elected by the community. So I feel like the most important decision often that we make in this at this board is who is going to be leading our district, and that's a decision that we make as a board, not going to the community to say who do you want to be our superintendent. So I think over the course of our tenure as a board member, we make a lot of complex decisions on behalf of our community. I would say just given everything the three of us have been through with our first 2.5 years on this board, we have every right to make this decision. We are educated about what our district needs, and I would say that we've been elected to do so. So I do see your point, and I would say all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a valid point. But having the authority to do so, if there's no further discussion, having a first and a second for the motion to approve the renewal of the operating levy from 2015 by approving the resolution at pages 157 and 158 of the board book packet. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, it's unanimous. Moving on to the capital levy. Unfortunately, or well, depending on your viewpoint, we don't have the opportunity to renew this, But in your board book packet at pages 164 to 169, there is a proposed resolution which would support our approval of, or our recommendation to renew it and put it on the ballot for this fall. So I'll get this one rolling as well, I guess. I would move to approve the resolution which sends the renewal option for the 2015 capital levy to the ballot this fall as set forth in the resolution at pages 164 to 169 of the board book packet. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Director Carbone. Any discussion? Director Cameron?
I support the renewal of this going to ballot. I think just for the interest of the recording, to just go through the elements just quickly, and I have the slide pulled up here. So this would be an approximately $4 million increase per, not, sorry, let me start over. A $4 million funding per year with no tax rate increase. This is again a renewal, and it would support many of the things we heard about tonight. It would support career pathways, including K-12 STEM programming, cybersecurity, security equipment, educational technology such as devices and infrastructure, and this supports 5.5 full-time staff with this capital levy. So I just thought I would highlight that. There's a slide, but just audio too.
Can I just add to that too? I know when we were going to be going to one of the chamber events to talk about some of this stuff, Grace provided a lot of really good communication around this, that a lot of people think about this as the tech levy and iPads, and so much of this is maintaining security of, so not just the iPads, I mean, that's a separate thing, but making sure that our students are safe with their use of technology. So just all the servers and things that are used to make sure we have that protected. So that cybersecurity piece is really important.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I would just build on what Amber said about the STEM. I mean, it is that technology that they're using in STEM. So if we want to expand those areas of study within our school, we need the technology to do so and the funding to purchase it and maintain it. So, Director Thompson.
So I am in favor of this moving to the community for letting them choose and vote on this particular levy. I think at a high level, there's a lot of good things in it, and there's a lot of, I think, value add for all the grade levels in this particular levy. It is a $40 million over 10 years, and so for someone someone like myself who would like to see the details, I would recommend from a communications point of view to ensure that we're very clear, like, here's where $4 million are going towards. Hey, wow, $600,000 and $700,000 is going towards STEM. Great, I get that. Like, STEM is awesome, but what are you doing with the $600,000 in STEM? Like, are you buying new STEM equipment? Are you buying XYZ? And then when you aggregate that out for 10 years, you're looking at $6 million worth of STEM equipment. Is that what we're buying, or is that what we're doing? And so there is the use of iPads, the use of technology, the use of security, and so while we may not want to inundate our community members with all the details and all that stuff, but I think there are some folks that may want to know, okay, if we're going to spend this much amount of money, it's a lot of money. Let's be very clear, because I can quantify, hey, if you're going to get 20 teachers and each teacher costs $150,000, you can get to that $4 million. But if we're hiring 5 teachers and they're $150,000 on average between wherever they start and benefits and so forth, right? I mean, that's only $1 million. So what are we doing with the other $3 million? And so I think I want to be, my recommendation is so that our community members are clear with where this money is going, how it's being allocated, and obviously there's a 10-year window for that this is going to continue to run. So those are my recommendations. But yes, I'm in favor of this moving to the community and letting them have a voice.
Director Cameron.
One question I have for district staff on the draft ballot language. I know when you're going to go after a new levy, often it will say if you vote yes, you are acknowledging that this will increase your taxes, or there's some language to that effect. Is it possible to add language here? And I see here it says, by voting yes on this ballot, you are voting to renew an existing capital project referendum that is scheduled to expire. Can you also say resulting in no new? No, you cannot. Okay, just thought I would check.
It's a good question. There's a lot of no.
Yes,
negative head shakes.
I appreciate your question, and obviously we asked that as well, but I learned a long time ago, no can do. But to Director Thompson's point and others, the communication and the details were, if this is successful, we will be embarked on a robust plan to do that.
All right, there being no further comments, motion having been made and seconded, all those in favor of approval of the resolution at pages 164 to 169 of the board book, sending the capital levy renewal to the ballot, say aye.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. All right, we're done.